pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could we remain standing for a moment of silence for Gary Breidinger? Thank you. We have roll call, please.
Okay. Tiley?
Here.
Coots?
Here.
Newman?
Here.
Horner?
Here.
McPhail? Absent. Dennis?
Here.
Tiley? Absent. And Newman? Did I call you? Okay.
Yep.
Well, wait a minute. Did I? I couldn't remember if I.
Minutes, let's see, agenda before you, is there any corrections or exceptions or anything?
No, no.
We'll accept the agenda as presented then. Any announcements, any public comments? Don't appear to be. Old business. SAW grant update presentation by Spicer and Associates.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
We are here today to talk about your water system, which is actually not part of the SAW grant. This is actually separate, but it's related because it is one of your public utilities. So today we're going to talk about your water distribution system. And you each should have a packet in front of you, which has a wealth of information we'll go over. I figured it'd be easier to hand it out than do a presentation on the big screen. So, this reliability study that we are doing is something that is required by DEQ, is mandated by the Safe Drinking Water Act. Typically, it has to be done every 5 years by every water supply system, unless the MDEQ waives that requirement. For the village, the MDEQ has waived that requirement since 1996 because you really haven't seen any growth and you really haven't had a need to do it. So the DEQ really didn't even ask you to do this one, but because we're doing the other infrastructure work, it's a good time to look at it and let's take a holistic approach and look at everything. So we will be submitting this to the DEQ if you wish, and that would satisfy their requirements for not only the Part 12 reliability study but the Part 16 general plan. So it'll take care of two birds with one stone. So if you turn to the second page here, there's some definitions I would like to go over with you, and I'll be talking about these throughout tonight. First off, average day demand. That is, the water that you use on any given average day. We take the annual water usage divided by 365, and that gives you the average day demand. The maximum day demand is that 1 day, 24-hour period, usually in June or July, that is your highest water use. Usually it's, at the end of June on a Sunday when everybody's coming back from up north and they start their laundry and they wash their car and they wash their boat, they take a shower and everybody's using a lot of water. So that's your max day. The peak hour is that 1 hour within the max day in which you're using the most water. So typically what we do is we report pressures at the max day demand, or the pressures at the peak hour demand, and we report flows and fire flows at the max day demand. That's just how the MDEQ wants us to look at it, and it's good practice for looking at the hydraulics of your water system. Static pressure, otherwise known as just pressure, that's at any given time in your system, if you put a gauge on a hydrant, you'll be able to read the pressure in the system. Residual pressure is if we open up a hydrant and we're flowing a lot of water, your static pressure will drop because we're flowing a lot of water, and that's called the residual pressure. So when we're doing hydrant flow tests, we measure the static pressure, we flow a hydrant at a given rate that we know, and then we measure the residual pressure. So we're measuring the pressure drop at a known flow, and that's what residual pressure is. Fire flow is the amount of water that's available, above and beyond normal water use demand that's available for fire protection. It's usually reported at a residual pressure of 20 psi. That is so the fire department doesn't draw too much water out of your system and potentially suck groundwater and contaminants into your system. So you never want to drop the pressure in your water system below 20 psi. So when we're talking about fire flows in this study, we're talking about fire flows at 20 psi residual pressure. So if you look at the next page is it's historical water usage, and then we also need to, for the reliability study, project out what your future use is for the next 5 years and for the next 20 years. From past studies and from a wealth of information that Jen has been able to get for us, we were able to look and gather some information. There's a graph on the next page that shows the same information just graphically. That's this one. And basically over the last 25 years, you really haven't grown a lot in your water usage. If anything, you've declined in your water usage a little bit. You've declined on an average of about 0.2% per year. So that's pretty flat. If you look at the blue line on this graph, that's your average daily water usage. That's pretty flat line. And so we are predicting for the next 20 years, you're gonna remain flat. So when we looked at the hydraulics of the water system, we didn't even bother with the 5-year projection. We went straight to the 20-year because it's the same thing. So that'll satisfy the DEQ, and it'll basically say the village is pretty much built out, and if we do add customers, it'll raise our water usage a little bit, but everyone's getting more efficient washers and dryers, and they're using less water, so overall our water usage is going to stay about the same. So
Can I ask you what MD/AD is?
MD/AD, that is the maximum day demand divided by the average day demand, and that's called a peaking factor. And so when we're looking at in the future, we want to figure out what your past peaking factor is, so we can apply that to the future to figure out, from your average day demand to your max day demand, what that number should be.
What is the peak hour of usage?
What, pardon me?
What hour is the peak hour of usage, or that?
It varies. A lot of times it's, sometime between 6 and 8 in the morning. Other times it's, between 6 and 9 at night. It just depends. It just depends on. But there is, more water usage typically in the morning, and then it levels off a little bit, and then it picks up again in the evening, and then drops right off at night. So this is information that the DEQ wants to see, and basically, we're saying that, your future water usage is pretty flat. So the next graph I have is more information we were able to get from the past studies and from Jen. This is the number of water customers, and you can see back in the late 80s, early 90s, you had about between 900 and 920 customers, and then over the past few years you jumped up to about 940. That averages out to about 1 new customer a year if you look at it over the long term. So we just projected that out to the future, and in 20 years you should have about 965 customers or so if you continue with this same trend. Again, there is not a lot of space within the village to pick up new customers, and this doesn't account for any outside of the village customers that you may pick up should there be, a water extension somewhere in the future outside of the village. This next chart, which is this one right here, this is your top 10 water users. Rock Creek, McDonald's, Bad River Bar and Grill, the laundromat, car wash, a couple of apartments, the motel, probably ones that you figured would be pretty high users. I was kind of surprised that the schools weren't on the list, but they were, I think, down there around 18, 20, somewhere in there. So, but these are your top 10. And, we need to calculate this when we're looking at the computer model and going through the hydraulics of the system.
Rock Creek is out here. They must change their name.
It's out,
right down the
Spruce,
street.
yeah.
Yeah, but I see it's Ithaca, so.
So next, now that we've looked at kind of your demographics a little bit, your water usage, number of water customers, we get into your water system inventory a little bit. I took this page from your water asset management plan. Your hydrants, you have about 150 hydrants in the village. You've got about 300 valves, about half of those are auxiliary valves on the hydrants. You've got the meter pit up at M52 and Martin Drive that has the meter, that meters the water coming from the city of Saginaw and from the James, Swan Creek, St. Charles water supply. That meter pit also has a control valve in it that reduces the pressure and helps regulate the level that's in the water tower. That valve was last serviced in 2007, so it might be time to have somebody, take a look at that and, do some maintenance on it. I don't know when the last time you looked at it, Don.
We have, like I said, we haven't recently had any.
Yep.
It's on our mind, though, definitely.
Yep.
'Cause
So it's been about 10 years on that, so it's probably about time.
it's a very important piece of the
Yep.
system.
And that control valve was originally put in because you used to get really high pressure fluctuations from the city of Saginaw. Whenever they would kick on the pumps, you guys would get hit with a 100 PSI spike and it would blow water mains right out of the ground.
Yep.
So we put in that control valve to help control that. So, your elevated tank, it's a 250,000 gallon elevated tank, right down south of here. Looks like that was last painted in 2007, and it looks like you are due for another inspection on that. They recommend getting that inspected about every 5 years or so. So get with Nelson or Dixon, I don't know who's done the past.
I think Nelson done it.
Nelson does it?
But Dixon's done it.
Yeah, either one, they're both good companies. I think the inspections are about $5,000. It would be good to have that inspected. Your next thing is your inventory. Another part of the inventory, this is your pipes. And it shows that, 13% of your pipes, about 13,000 feet, were installed in the 1940s. Another 13% in the 50s, another 12% in the 60s. So you've got, a third of your system that's more than 50 years old. By size, most of your system is 6-inch and 8-inch pipe, and there is some 12-inch pipe that comes down from the meter pit and goes to the tower. And I believe, I need to do some more checking on this, I believe that 12-inch pipe is actually a James Swan Creek St. Charles Authority pipe. So I think that was installed with the rest of the system, and I think that was upgraded, so I need to do a little bit more digging, but I do believe that is part of the authority. So, which means that if there's any improvements that were needed on that,
It's part of it.
could be part of the authority.
Why are the numbers in red on that page?
Numbers in red, I put replacement cost, cause I was looking at, various scenarios, and, just looking at it, without doing detailed estimates, I used $200 a foot. I was looking at, what if we wanted to replace, all those 1940s pipes? It'd be about 2.6 million. What if we wanted to replace all those 1950s pipes? The ones in red are ones that I think are probably more worthwhile looking at. And that would be replacing the 4-inch pipes or replacing the cast iron pipes. So the majority of your system, is 6 and 8-inch pipe. By material, you've got about 20% cast iron, and you've got about 50% asbestos cement, which a lot of people, the word asbestos scares them, but asbestos cement pipe is actually very good pipe. It ages well. If it gets disturbed, it tends to get brittle and break. But it is good pipe as long as it's, you know, left in the ground, and, you know, it'll stand the test of time. I think, knock on wood, you've had less trouble with the AC pipe.
Usually, like I said, usually you don't have problems with that, it's the valving and stuff.
Does that have friable material in there?
So what?
When I use terfrite, some people call it friable, but you know, the stuff that breaks off and gets into the system?
No, not if it's, you know, in the ground and it's wet. It can get friable if it's, you know, cut into, if you dig down and you cut into it and you're not using a wet saw. When you are doing things like that, you do need to take the proper precautions, because it is an asbestos material.
if it's.
If it's airborne.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
there's a lot of it in the ground. in Michigan.
It's all over. It was a very common pipe. It's everywhere. So,
We could be like on the Red Green Show and have, you know, call this place Port Asbestos.
Port Asbestos. I met him.
Have you?
Yeah, and if you did wanna replace all your asbestos cement pipe, it's about $10 million. Yep. So if we go to the next page, this is actually, right out of your GIS. So when you get on the computer and look at your GIS, you know, this is the kind of information you're gonna see. This is, just, the pipes colored by year it was installed. And you can see the different colors and, you know, the years installed. There is some that is unknown. The next sheet is your material. You can see all the yellow is your asbestos cement pipe. The blue is a cast iron pipe, you know, et cetera. The next sheet are your pipes by diameter. You can see all the 4-inch in yellow, and the 6-inch are in blue. And you can also see the system, you know, extends out to the west on Walnut Street, and out Spruce, and, you know, down 52, actually quite a ways. You know, we've got some fingers that head out there quite a ways.
Well, that's the old well house at the bottom.
What's that?
That's the old well house at the bottom.
Yeah,
I mean, that's where our water used to come from.
really, it was over there on Brant and Brant
There's
52.
two of them, one on each
Brand,
side
one
of
right on brand
52.
52.
No kidding.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah, that's how we got our water.
Uh-huh.
That and up in the park.
There was a
I
third,
knew there was one up at the park.
there was a third one on Graham too.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, but that was real mysterious. None of us here really knew what that was.
The building's still there.
Yeah.
This next sheet is just a summary of the hydrant flow tests that we did a couple weeks ago. And the map behind it is just the locations that we did the hydrant flow tests. We tried to get, you know, a nice even cross-section of the community. We use these hydrant flow tests when we're calibrating the computer model. We want to get that model to mimic these conditions as best we can. At Fulton and Hosmer, that was fire flow number 9. That was where we had a water main break, and it actually ended up breaking 5 times, and Don spent 3 days chasing that down. So there was a main break right in the heart of kind of the downtown-ish area. We wanted to get a couple more hydrant flow tests to the south, but we figured it just wasn't worth it with everything that happened with that. So with that, this next colorful sheet, you're gonna see a few of these colorful sheets. This is your static pressures under max day demands that we figured for the year 2018. And basically what it shows is your system is pretty good all around. You're in the 40s 40 PSI, the 45 PSI, that red line that goes through the middle, that's the 45 PSI contour. It gets a little higher as you go to the east, and it gets a little lower as you go to the west and to the south. So, you know, right through the middle of town, you're about 45 PSI.
What does PSI mean?
PSI is pounds per square inch.
Okay. Well, I just need to get my terms
Mhm.
right.
Yep, pound, yeah, that's pounds per square inch, and it's just the measure they use for pressure. You're about, 47, 48 PSI to the east, and you're down to about, 41, 42 to the, west and to the south. This next colorful page,
Oh my goodness, what is this one?
this one are fire flows. This is one that your fire department will wanna see. So, these are fire flows. The reds are ones that we wanna be looking at. The reds are ones that are less than 500 or less than 1,000 gallons a minute. So, and
What sheet you're looking at?
it is this one right here.
Okay. They look different far away.
It's the one that you could put in a museum. and
Yep.
Okay.
look like-
I'm
It'd
trying to
look like
figure out where
parts.
my road is on this.
It's modern art, it'll be up for auction later.
Your road is right here.
Yep.
Right here.
And what this shows is your highest fire flows are near the tower and near the 12-inch line that supplies most of the city. And then the fire flows get less as you get off to the west, along those long dead ends. And as you go to the south, the long dead end, they get lower and lower. And then there's a couple of dead ends within the village that also have very low fire flow.
Yeah, I'm on one of those.
So
Where are you? I'm happy.
Up here.
So those areas of low fire flow, those are the ones that we're gonna wanna look at, for possible improvements and do things. But this is one that the fire department's gonna wanna see. The next two sheets are the same ones we just looked at, but using the 2039 pressure and then the year 2039 fire flows. They are almost identical to the ones from 2018. But because the DEQ requires us to do a 20-year projection, we have to show the 20-year projection of what your flows and pressures might be. The next few sheets are actually smaller ones. This is your history of water main breaks that we got from village staff. And then there is a drawing that's got a whole bunch of red dots on it that looks like this, that shows you where a lot of the breaks are. And there is a correlation between the break locations and the cast iron water main. I think Don would agree that, most of the breaks you've had have been on the cast iron, water mains.
It's this one, Chris.
Yeah, I don't have
It's small, it's back behind the maps.
And I know a lot of these locations are not necessarily exact, because some of the information we were given, it would say there was a break on Bell Avenue,
Right here.
so we didn't know exactly where it was. But, you could see there's a concentrated area, around downtown, and then another one kind of right about where we are here. And then up by Sunview, there's also another grouping.
And the other thing I noticed too, John, is that downtown area, it's cast iron and it was put in the 40s.
Correct. You're absolutely correct. And a lot of it is 4-inch pipe. So when we were looking at the improvements, the first thing we looked at was, okay, the 4-inch pipes are undersized by today's standards. A lot of them are cast iron pipes. What would happen to your system if we were to replace all of the 4-inch pipes? And so here's a list of your 4-inch pipes. And here's a map that shows where the 4-inch pipes are. And they're all in yellow. So if we were to replace all these 4-inch pipes, that's around $2 million. I think we had about $1.8 million. So that's around a $2 million project. And then from the modeling, pressures it really doesn't affect. Your modeling on here, what this shows is that there are some areas within the village, proper, that it does help with the fire flows. What it does not help is the areas to the west and to the south where you have the long dead ends. So it does help increase fire flows within the village, but it does not help those long dead ends. The next scenario we looked at was replacing all of the cast iron mains. So here's a list of all the cast iron mains. Here's a map that shows you the location of your cast iron mains. And then the next one is, what happens to fire flows when we replaced all those cast iron mains with 8-inch PVC pipe. And again, what it shows is that fire flows within the village proper increased, but, out on the edges, out on the west and down in the south, it did not help, which it wouldn't. And all the cast iron mains, we looked at that at about $4 million. So the next scenario we looked at was, okay, let's replace all the 4-inch and all the cast iron. And that's this drawing here. And again, that's the contour fire flows that show, basically the same as the other two maps, that it helps the village proper, but it doesn't help the long dead ends to the west and to the south. So, to fix the dead ends, in the village in the south, we're looking at doing potentially a couple of major looping projects, if that was what you wanted to do. And the loops that we had proposed here were, on the south, looping around Brant Road up Carr Road to the existing main. It's about, 2.5 miles of pipe. That's probably a couple $1 million project. The other loop we looked at was, Walnut Street and Ithaca and Fortney Road. Doing a loop out there on the west. Again, that's probably $1.5 million, $2 million project there also. And those are projects that, they won't be done unless there's customers out there who want the water, and, it's gonna be one of those petition items that, unless they want the water, it's not gonna go. So, the one on Carr in Brant Road, I did a count of properties along through there, and there's about 80, 90 properties through there. I don't know if each one has a house on it, but, there's a potential to pick up quite a few customers. And then the one on the west, on, Fortney and Walnut down there, I think there was about 30 to 40 customers on that one. So there is a potential to pick up additional customers, but they're very expensive projects because they're not in a highly populated area, and they're pretty rural. If there was a reason to put water there already, there'd probably already be water there.
Well, we went through a huge fight on Carr Road.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't for a loop, it was to go out maybe, I don't know, mile, maybe half a mile, maybe a half a mile. And we had a petition.
Yep.
Or they put together a petition, they were gonna pay for it.
Yep.
They brought it in, and 2 people did not want it out of all of them.
Yep.
And those 2 people wanted the courthouse,
Really?
and that was it, that was the end of the project.
Yep. So,
We honestly, people come to us relatively frequently and say, hey, can I get water out here? We tell them, you gotta do a petition, you gotta go through the process. And, you know, we can't really help you with that, you have to do it on your own.
And they did, and, the people that were against it are, one of them still living. But the guy that turned it down at the courthouse was gone. The commissioner's not there anymore, it was that guy's best friend. So, you know, I don't know.
you know,
Yeah, I think we count, there's like about 70 houses
Yeah.
there, so
So-
it wouldn't help that grammar.
But in the process, the people that really wanted the water went ahead and dug new wells,
yep.
you know, so now they all have new wells.
You know, down at the south end of the system, 52 and Brant Road, you've only got about, 200 gallons a minute fire flow. You know, and for fire protection, that is very poor. That is very, very,
And that's where?
that would be down at the very south end of your system, M52
Stern?
and Brant Road.
Oh, M52 and Brant Road.
Okay.
You know, you've only got about 200 gallons a minute, and that's, that doesn't fill up a fire truck very fast. And it would be very easy for the fire department to connect there and fill up their truck too fast and depressurize your system. Could cause a lot of problems. And it would be a very.
If they know about it, wouldn't they run back into town and get the water?
They do.
Yep,
I was gonna say, I think they come back and get the water, so.
Yep.
They do.
there should, I would think that there would be a spot somewhere near the tower or, where they.
Yeah, we're working with them, we're trying to
Yep.
direct them in the right direction.
Train them,
the right-
yes.
Typically, they go to like the Hanchett in 52 or Cole in 52.
Mhm.
We're trying to train them to go closer to the tower. We're actually gonna put markers on the hydrants we want them to use.
Yep.
Yeah,
We've
we're gonna
talked-
mark the ones we prefer them to use, and the other ones just leave them all. If they can.
In a situation where they're rallying outside the village, like if there's a house and there's a hydrant in the front yard, even if it's not the one we want them to use, I mean, they should still use it.
Yeah.
But, you know,
But if they're hauling water,
Yes.
use the ones we want.
And if they're hauling water out beyond where our lines are, which they do that too, so.
they do.
Another one that is not shown on here that was a very good improvement was looping Sunview around to Beaver Road.
We tried so hard, she's still
Yep.
there.
Yep.
Um,
You've got low fire flows out on Beaver Road, you've got a dead end on Sunview, and looping that around is a good one. So if circumstances prevail, it'd be a
and
good
that
one.
wasn't that expensive, that's a short,
That's a pretty short stretch,
pretty
yep.
short stretch, and
Yep.
it's, Sapiensky. And, but next to him now are, Schindlers. And I wonder if we could just drop it a lot down and see if, cause all we were gonna do was go across.
Yep.
Cover it up, plant the grass and walk away.
We could even
You know.
drill it now, we could do a directional drilling project
Yeah.
now, and it wouldn't even impact
I don't know
very
if
little.
Kay's changed her mind at all, but we tried so
Yep.
hard.
So,
We tried, it was Cecil. Cecil wanted her to do it too, she would do it.
I know we have, there's an emergency valve where we can turn on Swan Creek's water to our system over there.
yep, that's at
But
Beaver and Town Line.
That's not ideal, obviously.
This would have given me better water
Yeah.
pressure.
Yeah.
That Beaver and Town Line area
Yeah.
is the lowest pressure in Swan Creek system,
Is it too?
Yes.
Okay, well, that wouldn't help then.
so.
No, it's better than nothing.
Right, it's better than nothing, if there's a catastrophic, depressurization, you could open that and get some relief,
Yeah.
but,
Don't forget, that used to be ours,
Yes, yeah.
right, so.
until Swan Creek stole
Yep.
it. So, no
You,
bad feelings here.
Yeah, Matt doesn't know about all these bad feelings, so he missed all that.
I know some of it, I've heard it.
we wanna loop water mains whenever possible. It helps you increase the fire flows, it increases the reliability of your system on that long dead end. If there's a main break, everybody past that's out of water. If you have a loop, you can shut valves and keep more people in service.
Did Swan Creek ever loop from, I guess it would be Hartley, down to Town Line Road?
They did
And
not
they can't-
loop,
they didn't do it.
they put a quarter-mile dead end
Okay.
out there.
Now, when you're talking a loop, explain to me exactly what you mean. Is that pipe going to have water in it all the time, or
Well-
not, or it's
Well,
gonna be shut off?
what a loop is, say you have, right now you've got a water main that runs, a single water main that runs all the way down M52. That's about a 2-mile long dead end. Now, if we were to connect a pipe to that and loop it back around to the city, that would be a loop.
Okay.
Cause the water would continue.
It could be fed from both ways.
It could be fed from both ways.
But there is water in it, it's not
There-
like it's
there's-
just a
right.
pipe.
There is water in it all the time, and because it's a loop, that water is always moving and it's kept fresh, the water quality's better. On dead ends, a lot of times, the water just sits there and Don has to go flush them out to keep the water fresh.
And it's warm.
It's just a good idea to have a, connected system. And that's why, in the downtown area, even though you have smaller pipes, you have decent fire flows because that network is looped around almost every block. So you can get away with having some smaller pipes because they are looped so much. And that's why, the dead end up on Beaver Road, why you have low fire flows, because it's a long dead end. Same with Walnut, Spruce, and N52.
Now, on Woodlawn, on the end and to the north, there was a water line there. Is that still there?
I'm not sure.
Say that again, Chris?
On the end of Woodlawn, before you get to Beaver Road, there's those lots that go this way, and then there's a line that turns and goes beside that guy's house. And it used to go out to someplace where Cecil stole water. And it was, I can't remember if we shut it down, took it out, or if it's still sitting there.
I think, well, this is a long time ago, I think there was just a valve shut off at that time, I don't think there's any digging done.
So that line is still there, but it's shut off.
I believe it, there was an AC main. that
So there's
went
an odd line out there
Okay.
floating around,
Okay.
North to his property.
and north
Feed
to his
anything?
property.
Okay.
It doesn't feed anything?
Yeah, it fed something that Cecil had out there.
Oh,
Mm. And that's,
Yeah.
Well, I think Swan Creek last year ran a line off Beaver Road into Michigan Pallet. I think there's a line that runs, that'd be
Yeah, it
Swan
might
Creek
be.
Township.
yeah, this, it's all in Swan Creek Township.
Yeah.
I mean, Woodlawn's in Swan Creek
Right,
Township.
yep.
But that line was unknown, and I can't remember how we figured out it was there.
Isn't the pallet one of our
I don't know
customers?
if you were here
What's that?
then.
Isn't the pallet company one of our customers?
They are, but they
They put a hydrant in from the rear.
they got a fire line back there from
Yep.
Swan Creek Township.
Yeah. That pallet company goes from here to here.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's another Sapansky, thing back there.
Yeah, there's like a
They've-
yard
they've
back
got
What's
a
his
yard
name?
back
The
there or
son-in-law
something.
had a place.
Eric Construction?
Not Eric,
No, it's,
Dude.
Leonard? The one that died?
Plating.
Bellenbaum,
Bellingbom.
Bellenbaum.
Gotcha.
The one that, had the property that the funeral home is on right now. He owned that and was gonna move over there. Well, his company is back there in that corner.
Now, one thing we
That
need,
might be what
one
it
thing we need to know is that there are some mains in the system that we don't know what they are. There are some that might be cast iron that we don't know what they are. There's one on Bell Road, between Cole and the curve. We know part of it's cast iron, we know another part of it's cast iron, but in between, we're not sure. So by the year 2025, those are the things we're gonna have to pothole and find out what diameter material it is. So there are some of those in the next 5 years we're gonna have to pothole. So that's all part of that lead and copper asset management stuff.
And this is on Bell Avenue between where and where?
It'd actually be south of Hanchett, in that area.
That's from DC,
Oh,
automotive.
Yep. There's some
Where
areas
those
in,
houses are down back in there?
yeah, I think he's.
The main itself is what he's talking about.
yeah, the main
It's like
itself.
Oh, the main itself going south.
The main
Okay.
itself,
Yep.
there's
It's
some
like in-
unknown,
We don't know what material it is, we don't have a plan on it,
Okay.
we just don't know, we know
But
what it
we're
is.
pretty sure it's there because water's going to the other side.
We know it's there, cause water's going, and, we just don't know what material or size it is. We can make
Okay.
some guesses, but we don't know. So, when we're talking about, replacing, all the cast iron pipes, there are some that are unknown that may not be included in that.
Right there in the cemetery curve, what kind of material is in there where that
well,
always breaks?
they redid
That's
the
new.
crossings that, high density polyethylene.
Yeah, we
but-
put a plastic pipe for, I think it was about 800 feet, something like that.
But
Here's reflection.
We actually drilled it in and we used the plastic pipe because you could, heat fuse it together, so it's one 800-foot long pipe, there's no joints in that 800 feet. And it actually, worked out real well,
Mhm.
so.
Well, that broke every year,
Yeah.
and we couldn't reset.
I remember Hal calling me up one day, we need to do something. So.
It was too deep.
So that, in a nutshell, is what we found from, you know, the hydraulics of the water study. You know, what it really comes down to is, you have some old main, you have some undersized main, you have some cast iron main that's, you know, susceptible to breaking, and it has broken, you have a history of breaks. So really, our recommendation is to look at the 4-inch main and the cast iron main, and let's come up with a plan to, you know, do some replacements and try to target those areas. You know, do we need to do it all at once and spend, you know, $4 million at once? You know, that's why we're here discussing it, because, you know, it could be done all at once, it could be done little by little over years. So, and I think with that, it's a good time to turn it over to John to talk about the money part of it.
He doesn't have good news.
Yes.
Are you saying I don't have good
I
news?
said, something just tells me you don't have good news.
What would be good news?
Oh my gosh, we have all the money that we need to do this.
Okay, well,
You don't have-
anybody has that news.
Scenario one.
So I've got 3 scenarios here, and they are kind of the gradual approach that I presented last time when we didn't have the information that we now have. And then I've got a scenario where we're funding the 4-inch main only, and then another one with all the cast iron. So there's a $1.8 million project and a $4 million project. So let's just start with scenario 1. There are 3 pages, they all look the same except the numbers change and a few words change. So at the top you'll see, and all of these, the sewer remains the same. We're just trying to look at the variability with the water. So on the sewer side, we're still assuming kind of the medium level of service. And we've added the ready to serve on the sewer side. So for the first scenario, we're assuming what we did before. We start investing, building into the rates $30,000 in the first year, and then every year after that it goes up $5,000. So each year we're adding another $5,000 to recover through the rates for main replacement. And over the course of the 10 years that we're looking at, that's about $1.4 million is what we'd be accumulating over those years. And you could be spending some of it, or you could be saving it. So you'll see down on the, if you look at the bottom left chart, that's the capital plan for the water. That's kind of the stair-step gradual increase year over year, little bit by little bit, and it's all being funded with cash. So we're not taking out any debt, we're just building it into the rates and gradually increasing over time. What that results in is a 10% increase in rates per year for the next 10 years. It's just 10%, 10%, 10% over and over and over. And that gets you to a funding level that is able to replace some of the mains, but not all of them, in the next 10 years. You would also be looking at, if you look at the first table at the bottom, under that draft, and that's kind of in blue, if you can see the blue. Right now, you're charging $41.76 for a 5/8 main for the ready to serve on the water side. And the per unit cost is $4.64. If we go out 10 years, that $41.76 turns into $109, so you've more than doubled the ready to serve, and the $4.64 goes to $8.88 per unit. So that's the increasing cost for water over those years under that scenario.
Is a unit $1,000 gallons?
Yes. And we're assuming that everybody would be billed 5 units minimum per quarter. But the average usage is about 15 units per quarter for the typical household usage. So we can move on to the second scenario. This one assumes that we're not gonna pay out of cash, but we're gonna bond for the 4-inch mains. One bond issue in 2023. And if you look over on the sewer side on the bottom there, bottom chart on the right side, the sewer, there's a bond issue in 2022. If you issued 2 of them together, you could draw, depending on the type of bond, you could draw money for one project in 1 year and money for the other in the next year. Or you could issue them both at the same time and do a lot of work across the village all at once. In this scenario, we are assuming that the bond is being paid over 20 years. And again, if you look up at the top chart, just above the years, you see the percentage change, the percentage increase in costs per year. And it's still about 10% per year. A little more fluctuation. We've got some years it dips down, and then the later years it goes down more because we're building up to the point that we need it, and then we finally got the cash that we need from the rates, and then we can start to slow down a little bit. So we reach a, if you look at the final number in the scenario 1, and again, this is all still hypothetical, $404 a quarter for a combined water and sewer bill, and in this one is $354. So that's the comparison between those 2 scenarios. You're going up initially about 10% a year, and then it starts to slow down, so the ending number is not as high. And then if we move on to scenario 3, here we're assuming replacing all of the cast iron pipes. As John mentioned, it's about $4 million. And to make this fit reasonably, we'd have to do 2 bond issues, and I put it in 2023 and 2028, and again, they're very similar to the bonds that we're looking for currently in the timing for the sewer side. So you could issue those together and save on some bond issuance cost. Here, rates are going up just under 10% a year, and you end up at $398. But now you've got $4 million of debt that you're paying back over the next 20 years. So debt obviously reduces the need to generate more cash from rates immediately. You're just paying it back over a longer time. So I've got some municipalities that prefer to pay with cash, so they would rather ramp up and pay cash. Others would prefer to stretch it out as long as they can, and they go to rural water and they get a 40-year bond or loan and stretch it out quite a bit, but then you end up paying a lot of interest. So those are the 3 scenarios that, and believe me, I've run probably 200 other ones, but I wanted to bring just 3 so you can see relatively how these different investments pay out and the different strategies that you can use to fund it. Now what I started to, but I didn't go too deep because we need to understand what we're doing before I spend the time figuring it all out. On the bottom in those tables, we can work in the model to shift the costs between the ready to serve and the commodity rate. So where we are recovering those costs can be a fixed cost to the customers through a ready to serve, or it can be a variable cost to the commodity. And we try to balance it out, but we can get more aggressive or less aggressive one way or the other, depending on your policy or how you think your customers might react to different changes. I'm assuming that wasn't good news, Diana.
No,
Okay.
I didn't expect that it would be, to tell you the truth, but.
But in all of these, we're looking at somewhere around 10% increase per year. The replacing the 4-inch main option is the least impactful because we're extending it over time and it's a lower amount. But you can see compared to going and replacing all the cast iron and taking out $4 million, the impact isn't that much different. So we can work the numbers a little bit to get to a point that's more comfortable, but 10% a year seems to be the magic number.
All this requires study. I've got all this stuff on my desk in a little pile. And that, you know, and we have like, what, a few months here to look over this stuff and start discussing it. Because I'm gonna just have to go through this just a page at a time and spend time with it.
Sure.
Because- And this is so much information, at least for me.
Well,
Look
and
at
if-
all your little numbers and I think,
Yes.
whoa, you know, it takes a while.
So what I wanted to point out is scenario number 1 here. If you look at the same scenario that I presented last month, I tweaked the numbers a little bit. This table on the bottom, I realized I was putting a whole lot more cost on the ready to serve initially, so I adjusted it and shifted it down. And that was just trying to see if I could get it better. And I think this is a better scenario. It's the same numbers, but it's a slightly different structure in terms of the rates. I love silence. I have a moment of silence.
About what percent are you putting on the readiness to serve, John?
I'd have to look and
Just
see,
like coffee,
it's
yeah.
all over the place. So some years, when we get to a year where there's a new debt issue, the ready to serve kind of jumps up, but I try to soften that by the commodity going down or not going up as much. So it's a balancing act. There are some years where the ready to serve is going up 6 or 8%, and other years it's going up 20%. And again, I can take the time, depending on the direction, if we want to smooth that out one way or the other, I can work in the model to smooth that, so you get something that's more appealing or appetizing or agreeable.
I have I don't know who this question should, if it should be to Matt or to you, but I'll just throw this out there. Okay, we charge more for water than what we pay Saginaw, right? And right now, you said Saginaw's gonna go up possibly 8%, right? So we're looking at an increase there, but what I'm wondering is, after the bills are paid with our ready to serve and the increased difference, how much beyond the actual water costs do we retain every quarter?
I would have to look. I don't know, every quarter, I can talk like annually.
Okay, annually.
Generally, so we reduced in water costs last year, we reduced our expenditures by $35,000 because of the bond that we just paid off. So we have at least $35,000 over and above what we had expected to pay in our annual budget. But we've been pretty good about saving money in different areas too, so we generally end the year with surplus. I don't know how much, but it's at least $35,000 a year. So we have that to spend on a bond issue or whatever the case is. Now, that surplus goes into the fund balance, and that fund balance is important in case of rainy days and things like that.
Right, and I realize that, and that's when I'm trying to look at some of that stuff, you know, how much do we have, you know, so we have anywhere, I'm concerned about the 21%. I did call Chris and ask her about this, you know, they looked at 21% of the sewer pipes. Were you aware of the sewer pipes on some of you, did you realize they were that bad?
I guess I did after we had our meeting here with John, yeah.
No, I'm before that.
I wouldn't have guessed it would have been because of its age, but, I mean, that's an anomaly, I guess. That was-
Yeah, cause for emergencies and stuff, I thought, well, if nobody was aware of that, how many of the other ones, you know, are bad too, and can we figure on
But
looking at the same
That
percentage?
was
or-
put in at a different time than the other pipe was put in as a whole system, and that condition was pretty much steady. That was put in as a separate project, and
And-
that's why it's.
It was all put in, it was put in by a private person.
Right, a private company, and
It looked different than all of the other pipe in the village.
See,
It really
the
did.
installation was at a different time by a different contractor.
It
Yeah,
looked
I-
like different material, and the installation was not as good as the
Right, it
rest,
wasn't
so
as
it
good an
was,
installation as.
it was different.
and that's what I tried to explain to
Yep.
Diane, that, I wasn't as concerned that you only tested 20-some% of the sewer system, because our sewer system went in all at one time. So, except for a few exceptions, and Sunview is one of them, and Sunview and Woodlawn, we got those because Cecil gave us the park and pieces of the park, or however we wanna put it, and he put in his own water. And then when he came back and wanted to put in Woodlawn, we made him put in curb and gutter, and we made the specs for Woodlawn. I don't think there were any, I wasn't here for the Sunview one, and I don't think there were any real specs, he just laid a water line for his houses and built it.
It was probably built as a private contractor, he built
Well,
it.
he'd be the private contractor.
Right, he built it and then he just turned it over to the village.
Mhm.
So you're thinking that that's, it's kind of a case on its own over there?
I would think
Well,
so.
Sunview is different
I
from
mean,
Woodlawn.
you've inspected
right?
enough pipe of the original system to know as a whole what,
Yep.
As a whole, that,
basically what,
Yep.
the pipe that was put in on the original system, even though we didn't look at it all, you can pretty well guess.
She just wanted to know if I had a problem with, I said, I don't have any problem with it at all.
no, I guess
Yeah.
when I look at these numbers and I try to figure out bottlenecks,
Mhm.
I'm just
That
trying
was
to.
a good question.
Yes.
It was, I
It
can
was a
always
good
feel like I'm
question.
really dumb, but
Well, no, most people don't know that it was all stuck in the ground at
yeah,
the same
but
time.
it's okay, so that one is different, that's out of formula then.
Mhm.
See, in water, summer water, we don't have any idea
Right.
who put it in, how, when, or where, so.
Chris, did you say your daughter had a problem with
Yeah, she had a problem with the sewer.
sewer? And what did she have to do that?
Had to have a company come out and fix it.
Is she in Sunview?
She's on Sunview,
Is she?
yeah.
I had a weird thing. I thought it was water in my eaves, but I think water's, the sound of it's in my garage. And I've never had that in 20 years. And I thought, oh.
Yeah, she had a
There's just a lot to take in here, do you know what I mean, at once, and I always have more questions than I have answers to.
Well, and let me just explain to your concern about, do we have enough? These blue boxes here,
Right.
that's just looking at how much cash you have. And we're always trying to make sure, this black line is kind of what we're targeting for cash. So right now you've got a little bit more on the water side than you need. Sewer, you've got quite a bit more. So we're able to use some of that cash to keep rates lower. But then as bonds go up, you'll see on the sewer side, with every bond issue, you're gonna have a higher coverage ratio and a higher reserve requirement. Most bonds require something like 110 to 125 or 130% coverage ratio, so we've gotta always make sure there's money there, and some of them also require a reserve. So we're trying to balance to make sure you've got the cash that you need for operating costs, so all of a sudden you need another $10,000 to fix something right away.
It's still in there.
If money's there, or if your bonding agent calls and says, you know, how much do you have in reserves for debt, you can say, we've got this much, and they'll say, they'll check their box. And then the other portion of that, I think I use 10% of the value of your system, just in case there's a major failure. So you've got another 100,000 or so that you can use to fix something if it's unplanned.
So
I get, yeah, that-
these rates keep this line consistent.
Yes. Well, and you'll see some of them there's a little more variability as I'm trying to force the rates, and sometimes I let the cash go down just because the impact on the rates would be too great, and I know I can catch up to it a year or two later. So it's
Now,
a matter of smoothing out.
This 4176, is that the ready to serve charge?
Yes.
So we're gonna charge them 4176, and then how much per gallon
That's down here,
down here?
464, and with the 5 units minimum per quarter, that's
That's
just
what we're
that number
guaranteed.
times, right,
We're
yes.
guaranteed this number.
Right.
Okay, but it could go higher, and you don't know. That's
Right,
a
well, we're
variable.
assuming this is based on 15 units per
Okay,
quarter,
15,000 gallons
per
per
quarter.
quarter.
But there's a minimum of 5,000 gallons built.
Is our minimum right now 3?
It's 5.
It's 5? Because it used to
On
be.
the sewer, it's much different, 30 or something.
It's 30,000 on the sewer.
Yeah. So we're
But you're
trying
gonna
to,
bring that down?
yeah, we're gonna match them, and then we're gonna add the ready to serve on the sewer side. That's one of the options we presented last time.
And then, so it's 42, that's what it is right now, right?
Yes.
And then you're gonna charge 10, 20 extra on the ready to serve, or,
So this would be the minimum charge, and this is the new ready to serve charge for sewer that you don't have right now. So this would
Okay.
be a new ready to serve.
But we're
And
gonna
then
charge
there's
this per
5.
1,000?
Yes, and then 204 per thousand, and then again, that goes up as we go through time.
So really, okay,
And the reason we're able to shift some of, because we're looking at the total rate or the total bill, I can say, well, let's charge a little bit less on the sewer side and charge a little bit more on the water side.
I was gonna say, so our
So we're-
sewer rates are actually gonna go backwards for a while.
It'll feel like it, but the
Yeah.
total bill's gonna go up 10% because it's on the water side.
Yeah,
So,
so it's gonna be 1020 plus 204, 1,000.
yep.
So it's less than the 42 we're already paying.
Right. So it's kind of this
When does it,
back and forth.
when does
that
it
we
hit
go.
the 42 again? What, down in here?
Well, it would be, well, here it's 45, the 30 plus the 15.
It's beyond the projection date.
Here's 20. Well, if
Okay,
you
so it'd be
combine the
around
minimum
here.
with the ready to serve, that's kind of the minimum
I'm trying to
bill.
figure out when it'll get back to 42,
Yeah, probably out a few years.
just a couple years,
Yeah.
yeah, 45 here.
And again, for most users, it's gonna get there because they're gonna be using more than those 5,000 gallons in a quarter. 5,000 gallons in a quarter is a very small amount of water for,
And that'll be the big shift for people, is that they're not used to paying for sewer pretty much at all. I mean, in reality, because nobody generally goes over 30,000 gallons.
right. And it's only 50 cents per
And it's
unit,
50 cents per
so it's
1,000
almost
gallons.
nothing.
Yeah, so that'll be, I think that people will notice that for sure.
And again, we're phasing that in.
Yeah.
While we're dealing with the water side, we're phasing in this new structure on the sewer side.
We don't have anything to measure sewer usage, do we?
We
We
use
use
the
water.
It's
water.
the water,
Just on the water, okay.
space times.
Yeah, the assumption
Figure what
is
you
the
put in,
water
it'll come
you
out.
use
I,
also
okay,
goes down
I
the drain.
knew, I was thinking that.
Somebody's
and I
going to
Well,
didn't
say
that,
say
that's
that.
not actually true though, because that's why a lot of people put a separate meter on a, sprinkler system,
Right.
Right.
because there's no sewer charge on a sprinkler system.
Right, because it doesn't go down the drain.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Well, you
guys,
do have to
I
have
think
those
you've done a
pump
great
for
job of
100.
just
Yeah.
trying to
No.
figure out,
You put
Yeah.
your in there.
go in there and
Wasn't the
figure
line?
out in,
Put a line in, separate line.
John had
For the
said,
sprinklers?
I think we weren't gonna have any meetings until, any more this summer, that this is like the last one.
Yeah, that's entirely up to you. I'm gonna be gone for a little bit in June,
That's what I.
so, we probably, push it out to, at least July,
No, at least September.
September.
I wanna have some fun.
She
I
needs to
don't-
let
it's
this
been
marinate
cold
a
long
little
winter.
bit.
The wastewater, we have to have a decision and have to have it turned into the DEQ in November.
In November.
So that means if we, put it off until September, that means in September, we should probably have a meeting and then probably have a decision in October.
Okay.
Vote
We
on
gotta
it.
make sure we have
Well,
at least a double meeting or something in September.
well,
then.
she's just talking about she doesn't wanna have a second meeting. During the summer months, the meetings are pretty low-key.
Mhm.
Yep.
There's no reason we can't do both at the same meeting.
Right, and we can have discussions at the
Because
meetings.
our last meeting
Yep.
only lasted half an hour, 40 minutes.
Something like that. Fair share.
So you could have been here at the last time and we wouldn't have to be here
Yeah, because most of
tonight.
my point is, we can discuss most of
Yep.
this stuff, I think, in the regular meetings
Yep.
then. Because after all this stuff that you've gone through already.
So that's
But
the
I'm still trying to
schedule.
get this straight in my mind.
Yeah.
Straight,
So I can't imagine where you are.
Yeah.
my eyes are crossed.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I look that over, and then I bug people, so the bugging will probably continue,
Now, this up here is water and sewer, so $404 in
Right.
2029 is our water and sewer bill for minimum.
That's the average customer, so that's assuming 15,000 gallons of
Oh,
water.
15,000 gallons.
Right.
Okay, that's what it
So
says.
you'll see,
right
yeah,
there.
you've got your
Yep.
ready to serve, you got your 2 ready to serves, you got your 2 minimums, and then your 2 commodities. And that all adds up.
15,000 gallons, that is pretty average. I mean, that.
15,000 in a
Yeah.
quarter,
You
yeah.
know, three or four
I was
person
gonna say, I don't think I
home.
use 15,000.
Yeah,
There's just two of us,
Yep.
Right, yeah, 3 or 4 person uses about 15,000,
and we're not here.
varies 12 to 16 to 18.
It's part of it is, I take it home.
But again, like John pointed earlier, people are putting in more water efficient
My-
devices, so we're using
Wa-
less
water usage is going down industry-wide.
And that's why I guess I'd be careful how much you put on the commodity charge.
And
Right.
that's precisely why I don't wanna put too much on the commodity side,
Right.
because
There's too much variability to it.
Apparently. It's always minimum.
So I guess with that, you know, if there's any other questions, you know, you have for us, you know, any direction you wanna give us, we've kind of bombarded you with 20 pages of numbers and charts and graphs.
But these last three put it all together.
Right.
Yes, yes.
yeah, that's the hard stuff. It's nice to look at the charts, I love what the engineers can do, but you gotta put it down into the dollars and
Right.
cents, and then what's the impact on the customer, and
Yeah, I go back to that one that has all the little red dots on it, that shows all
the
the
water breaks.
Yep. I thought that was pretty impactful
Yeah.
also.
And that will continue unless
Yep.
you
Well,
do
it has
something.
continued, I mean, it hasn't quit,
Well,
so, yeah.
And what we see is a trend. So, and that trend is, you know, the cast iron mains, and they're not getting any younger. And that's everywhere. Cast iron mains that were put in that era, all over Michigan, are a problem. They're unlined, they weren't protected, and the soils in Michigan eat away the iron.
Can I ask, what in the sewer from last month? What are the debts for, what are the,
Those are
bonds for- what did you
primarily
assume?
for pump stations.
okay,
You've got a lot of pump station work that needs to be done. The blue line is some of the lower key projects that you just need to keep doing.
Yep.
Sunview, I think, was in there.
what, the little tiny blue
Sunview.
thing there?
That's,
Are you talking- what are you talking about?
Sunview might have been one of the bond, I think Sunview and the pump station.
I have to look and see.
Weren't they,
I'd have to
I
look
think they
back.
were together.
Yeah, I
Right,
think
so there's
those work
those
together.
two, and then the next one was another pump
Yeah.
station, or maybe two pump
It,
stations.
it did not include millions of dollars for lagoon work.
Okay. You just did something to the lagoons. Somebody ate through it or something? What?
Oh,
what-
we did.
What'd you just
We
do?
added
Added some,
We did a repair a couple months ago,
Okay.
there's
Yeah,
one of the,
we've got critters.
I know, so I guess what I'm asking is, are
one way
there
to
more
keep your
critters
levels
over
down.
there?
I'm sorry.
Are there more critters over there? Are there more places that are weak?
There are critters out there. We have an abatement program going, but,
Is that the shooting that I hear?
that may be,
Well,
might
Bill
not all
did
be
it
us.
for a while, for
No,
Cal.
Yeah, there's,
it may not be us.
if somebody shoots
You
on the
can't
other
stand
side
the
of the road
mosquitoes.
down there in our neighborhood, and I know what that is about, there's no way anybody in our road's gonna call and say, hey, there were shots down here. Because we're right on the edge of the Shiawassee Game Reserve, and all that stuff, I mean, the stuff that we've had in our yard, and we're across the street from that, ranged from deer down to, you know, I don't think I've seen a muskrat, but pretty much everything else, possums, you know, woodchucks, raccoons,
It
skunks.
appears most of the damage is from muskrats.
Yeah.
At first I was thinking it was woodchucks, but it looks like it's more muskrat.
It's
Why
a
don't-
perfect environment for them.
yeah,
Hal
mostly,
had Bill go over there and sit and try to shoot them, and the mosquitoes are so bad you can't stand it.
No.
This was like 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's tough to get, you know.
He thought it was gonna be great fun.
Yeah.
Bill did.
It's like deer hunting, they don't show up when you want
No.
them to.
Whack-a-mole.
I get, my question for you, Don, is, you know, in thinking about all this, at some point, I would like for you to input on the areas that you think are really bad. You know what I mean, what it is you guys take care of.
Well, I think the water main break problem is showing you what the area is.
So you think that that's the
That's-
same thing?
My mind, that's would be the area we need to start on.
I will note that.
yeah, that's a test case for why this is important, because what we are trying to prevent actually kinda happened. So, we had to call in 2 contractors to fix 5 breaks in a 1-block area. That's a little bit excessive.
Well, yeah, but we've known about that area for a long time. I mean, when we were doing the streets and stuff, we stayed away from that area, just not to disturb those lines.
When I did the study 20 years ago,
Yeah.
it was Old Main that we recommended it be replaced.
Yeah,
It's catching up with us.
it was, and we had that one bond out, and our plan always was, as soon as that bond was done, we would jump in there and do those lines over there on Hosmer and
Yep.
Clinton and all of them.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
the east,
I mean, the map John made pretty well tells you what,
it is exactly what I thought it would have done.
right, pretty well, that what we assumed is what we're looking at.
I mean, the map didn't surprise me at all.
And I think right now, you know, where we are, you know, we're kinda looking at, you know, are we looking at, you know, a $2 million project, a $4 million project, $10 million project? I mean, what are we really looking at? And, you know, with the $2 million project, we can make a huge dent in the, you know, small water mains and the cast iron, but it's not gonna fix everything. You know, the $4 million project, you know, could replace all the cast iron, but it's not gonna fix everything in the system. So, you know, you could invest $10 million, it's not gonna fix everything. So I guess the point that I'm getting to is, you know, we need to start somewhere, and we need to start chipping away at it, if you
And
will.
I mean, if we can do phases and even just get control of the areas that are, I mean, that older part of town, the valves are an issue too. You can't just shut down a 2-block area because that's not, you know, they're 80-year-old valves and they got buildup in the bottom of them, and when you have a water main break, you're shutting down twice the area that.
Cause I actually thought about that when I go to look at this, all of this, and put it all together, to consider it on, you know, basically a phase thing. I hate, it sounds like Jimmy Carter's gas plan, if you guys remember that at all, which didn't work out very well, phase 1, phase 2. But I think if we could look at it, maybe not a formal phase, but this and this and this, and kind of pick out, you know, as opposed to straight across here, you know, kind of what's most important, you know.
And with the most bang for our buck and at least get control of the areas
Right.
that are, even if we don't necessarily fix them right away, do some new valving off the new main and get a hold of the areas where there'd be the least impact when we do have a problem.
And this is the main data that I think is important for us to have that strategy in place, because really it's the water mains that inform us in terms of where we need to prioritize that infrastructure work. So in the areas where the water main breaks occur, that's also the area where the streets are the worst. So
Yeah,
those
that has to
layered
be, yeah.
projects are gonna happen in the same place pretty much at the same time. And then being able to use some of that money to, you know, resurface some of the streets is gonna create a funding structure for at least a portion of, you know, repaving those roads. So, and that's important for why we're doing all this layered stuff, is because
Right.
it's gonna help us, you know, disperse the costs of the total infrastructure layers that we have out there.
So the other thing that I just did last week was the other model that has your general funds, your major streets, your local streets, and your municipal streets millage fund. Those are all modeled now, and we've got a capital page that we can layer in more of this stuff to see where that's gonna go, and monitor those. That was part of the SAW grant because of stormwater, but it sounds like the strategy is to not really do much on stormwater proactively. But we can use that model now to look at the streets projects specifically.
Yeah.
And with the streets asset management plan, we have done all the condition assessments. There's a large amount of the streets that are in poor condition. Looking through the asset management portion of it, looking at all the formulas, you know, it looks like the investment that's needed just to keep the streets, you know, at an even level is about $400,000 a year. And where's that gonna come from? That's why your streets are in poor condition, because there's no money to spend $400,000 a year maintaining streets.
No, and I'll tell you what, the general economic situation has me scared right now. And I mean pure plain scared. We belong to a UAW retiree group,
Mhm.
and every month, the president of the UAW in Saginaw is now addressing our group on the latest news about how many layoffs and things they're going to have in there. Now, that employment is so down, their wages are down. As my husband said, they're making less money now than he did when he retired, and he retired in 1993. And he said, we were talking about that, if you're trying to keep a family afloat on that kind of money, you got problems. And I think that we need to take our families into consideration, well, also our old people, because I am one. But you know, social security folks, but it's very scary to me, the overall financial situation in this nation. And right now here in Michigan, we're in trouble.
Everybody's getting squeezed.
Right, and if
Yeah.
our governor charges her gas tax hike, nobody's gonna go anyplace.
And one thing that we gotta consider, and I know we do, is that, and it's nothing against anybody in this room, but old people don't pay the bills. It's the young working class that we gotta bring in to pay the bills.
You know,
They're the
Well,
ones
we
that-
paid them before.
No, what I'm saying, I'm not saying, I'm saying.
Your time's up. Somebody
Well,
else can take
if you-
over.
But if everybody retired today, the town would close. I mean, if there was no income, if there was nobody working in the grocery stores, buying the gas, hunting, fishing, boating, doing all these things that bring them into this town to do.
I think I'd have to
So,
challenge that a little bit, though.
You gotta have the younger generation in here
But
to
we
support
do need
and
that.
keep it going.
Okay, I agree with
You
you
do.
that we need younger people, but old people we pay taxes.
I get that, I
We
get
know-
that.
We pay
We
water
buy
and sewer
stuff.
bills. We buy stuff here in
I
town.
get that, but if you don't have a younger working class,
Well, you have to have the younger working.
then
Yeah.
it's not gonna survive. It won't survive. A retirement community is not gonna support itself.
But
If
the
you don't
point,
have
but the
income coming in.
point of it is, I guess, that I was trying to make, I don't know how many of our younger people we're gonna lose. I mean, obviously, if dad loses his job, and he's the major, you know, moneymaker in that family, they will move.
Yeah.
You know, they'll go wherever the work is. So that scares me. You know, I mean, when my brother lived in California years ago, I mean, when California shut down, if you remember that, you know, everything just shut down in California left and right. People just abandoned their houses. They did. They just moved out what they could absolutely had to have out of the house to survive, and they were gone. And they went all over the country to look for work because, and he said it was just, and these were nice houses. We're not talking a crappy neighborhood. We're talking, you know, nice houses. Those are professional people. So all of that's possible. And so I think we need to look at that when we're talking about, oh yeah, we'll just raise rates or whatever. Well, where are we gonna get the money in
So,
to take care of what's most important?
I want to address the timing issue on some of this because what I'm hearing is some of these mains should get repaired sooner rather than later. And we're looking at a bond issue in 2023 on the water side. I would suggest looking at your sewer fund, that you've got excess cash in your sewer fund. I would encourage you to think about loaning the water fund $250,000 and taking the $50,000 of extra cash on the water fund and doing a $300,000 main project, and then when you issue the bonds in 2023, you pay the sewer fund back from the water fund. That gets you a project much quicker. And people, once they see work getting done and things improving, then they see the rates starting to increase and they get, oh, okay, there's the connection. But if you're gonna wait, you're gonna raise rates and not do any work until 2022, 2023, nobody's gonna understand it. So I think I'm just looking at the numbers here, and I think you've got an opportunity because you do have more cash in the sewer fund than you need. We are using some of it in the first few years to keep the rates low. And you can see that's why that green bar is going down, because we're using cash. But even in that 2022 year, there's about $250,000 more than what you need. So I would encourage you to think about that as an option.
Yeah, and that's something that we're doing right now with the contamination. It's just an interfund loan, so that would be very similar. You're basically loaning yourself money and paying it back, and as long as you do it through an official action of the council, then you can do that. It's a legitimate form of
That's a
financing.
possibility too.
And then when people see work, they won't be surprised when, of course, their rates go up,
Right.
because guess what? I just got a new water main.
Right.
Well, and in the, in the estimates that we have, especially for water main, there is some road work included in those prices. You know, so the areas where you're putting in a water main, we are planning on, you know, making the necessary repairs to the road. Is it gonna be a full road reconstruction? No, but there is some money in there to make it look pretty when it's done, so.
And if it's a really bad road, you could take some of your streets funds and fix that
Well,
part
we
of the road.
do have our money that comes in with taxes for just for
Yeah.
streets too. And that's
And that-
routine and it's coming in.
And that's
all the
adding
time.
up over time, cause
Right.
we've been doing a lot of stuff with grants, and that money's been kind of adding up a little bit, so I think within the next year or two, we're gonna have almost $300,000 saved up from that fund. We're pretty close to it.
You know, right now, you know, for funding, you know, there's, you know, conventional bonds, you know, you could probably be better off saying this than me, but, you know, there's conventional bonds out there, you could bond it yourself, you could go through the county and use their bond rating and, you know, bond it through the county. Rural development, USDA rural development, right now has a pretty good program, low interest loans. That could be extended out to 40 years if you wanted to, you'd end up paying a lot more interest, but they're actually looking for projects to, you know, to give money away. So rural
Well,
development.
they'll fund for less years too.
They'll fund for less years,
Yeah.
correct. But if you were looking at that, you know, in my opinion, rural development is probably one of the places you're gonna start with first. You know, just to see what's out there, what the rates are. It's a good program that, is really meant for communities like yourself.
Is there any loan grant possibilities through
There-
USDA we
there's-
might qualify for?
There's grants if you are a low to moderate income community, in which St. Charles is not on the low to moderate income list. But,
Well, we're not, what list are we on?
but you could do, well, what do they call it? You could do like surveys and, you know, circulate surveys, and you could, you know, try to gather some more information, and you might be able to get
Is it-
Petition
like that.
to a,
Is it, could you possibly break it down by a certain neighborhood income
I think
level?
they
or-
tried.
No, but we did that. We did that for the housing program. We proved we were low.
Right, I mean, if we could prove that area was lower than the
Yep.
average of the
So-
village.
We
where-
did it for,
It-
St. Charles Grant.
And the
I
way,
forget where I
the
work,
way
but
rural development works is, you know, based on your income level, you know, they figure that, you know, the average bill should be this much, and they will provide grants for anything that might be over that. So, you know, if the average bill in this area is, you know, $200, and we're saying it's gonna be now $350, you know, they might be looking at a grant instead of a low interest loan.
So the rural development would be the first place to look.
It would be one of the first places that we would wanna check out, yes.
I'm trying to remember what I did.
You know, Michigan has been very good about scooping up all the federal money that other states have not used. And so Michigan is actually looking for projects, you know, they actually have an excess amount of money because they use it and they distribute it.
But if you go through rural development, they're gonna have some rules, and they're gonna.
There are federal rules and regulations and all the red tape that goes along with doing something through the federal government.
Financial requirements that they make you set aside.
Yep.
that
Yep,
kind of
right.
stuff.
There is,
Like the flood mitigation program.
Yeah, they make you put a certain
That was
portion of that
terrible.
money
Yep.
away every year until that
There-
loan's paid off.
you borrow money from the state level, there's a lot of red tape. You borrow it from the federal level, there's a whole nother level of red tape.
so, yeah, they're just gonna require that you demonstrate every year that you've raised your rates as you've agreed to. You're gonna have to submit income information, which they get from the census anyhow. And then there's the requirement that, you know, they're looking at, whether or not you're spending the money right, so you gotta justify that.
I just like dealing with my dad, you know, I mean, as a kid, you know, he was like that with his money.
Yeah.
When you said you wanted money for blah, blah, to get a new bicycle. Oh my gosh, you can't believe what we had to go through, you had to make, and if you weren't washing it and storing it where it belonged, you know, I mean, it was problems. But, and I do know that there's a bunch of that garbage, but I do think that we need to take a look at that kind of stuff. anytime we can get some free money, you know, for Pete's sake,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know what I did. You can't do it with water.
You can't?
No, I extended my, radius of what I worked with for the housing program and picked up Brant and Marion Springs and Chapin.
Okay.
And I went for the really, really low income people. And then when you put them all together, we qualified as low income altogether. So it was,
Well,
I worked with them,
and
a
if we,
lot of
and the
counties
other thing about that,
or
with the-
townships.
with the water is gonna be, our fingers outside the village are most likely higher income people on the water system.
Right.
Well, they look at the
Certain
village.
directions. They wouldn't
In
look at
certain
the system.
in certain
As far as I've seen, they look at the village, and they look at the last census numbers.
Yeah, we don't qualify for that.
But
So
don't-
there's
don't
another
they-
census
Don't
coming up.
they take in whatever that census area is as a whole? They can't really pick the village out individually, can they?
Yeah, they do.
I think they
With
do.
the census, they do.
Can they pick
Yeah.
that out individually?
Yeah, they do.
I don't know all the rules, but
So,
if you
That's
can
just-
qualify, it might be free money.
that'd be one avenue worth checking into, and, you know, there's money out there, and they're pretty good about meeting with you, you know, ahead of the project and giving you a fair answer whether or not they think it's a good program for, you know, good fit for the community.
My feeling is first of all, when I look at these, I'm not sure what we're getting for our money. I'm not positive what the projects are that go with the money we're getting.
Mhm.
But, this is over a long period, 10 years, and it's gonna go up anyway. So, there's no way the water bill's gonna stay 156. This number down here at this end. It's gonna go up anyway. With the city of Saginaw and with what we would have to do, there's gonna be a raise anyway. So you're probably not trying to justify what that total increase is. You're just trying to justify what the extra increase is for what we wanna do, you know?
Yeah, well, 8% of that is gonna be at no fault of our own.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's gonna go up anyway, regardless of what we do.
Yeah, if you left the water bill the same, we'd have less money to operate our system, because
Yeah, we can't do
our
that.
input costs are going up.
Yep. So,
And I don't know if this helps any, but the in-city customers, they're gonna absorb a 10% a year rate increase.
on their water?
On their water.
Really?
Their own customers that's what they're projecting.
See, they haven't done that.
They've never done it.
Yeah.
That's what they're talking, that last meeting, they said
Okay.
their own in-city customers, cause they were saying, if the lead and copper rule stays as it is, they're
Well,
looking
they
at,
gotta get some money
they're
together.
talking 2/3 of their water services have to be replaced.
Is that still,
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
they haven't, done anything that could still happen here?
Um,
It's happening.
The
Unless
The
the court order.
lawsuits have not been ruled on yet, but right now, you know, January 1st, 2020, we need to have a preliminary materials, distribution system materials inventory, which we basically already have with the information that was, you know, presented here tonight. You
So
know,
it's just a matter of putting the figures together.
They're not asking yet from the line to the houses?
We actually have a lot of that information put
Okay.
together already. A lot of it's unknown. You have a lot of unknowns, so the next step is to look at, you know, your past ordinances, talk to people like Don, Tito, Hal, you know, get some statements, you know, what they remember being put in. Chris, probably getting statements from yourself, you know, being the former manager about, you know, what you remember from the era.
How far is the earliest specs you can go back to Spicer for our projects? What is
I'd have to go take a look, I haven't looked yet.
but I mean, if you could do that, that would help us too, wouldn't it?
We found some from Saginaw Township from the 1950s.
So if we could find those, it would say, look.
Well,
this is-
I think they were
Absolutely.
using Spicer before they had a manager, so, if I remember right.
So, you know, we will be looking through our records to see, you know,
I can think of very few projects where we didn't use Spicer.
so we you know, we
You
will
should have
go
whatever
through
we
it.
did.
Right. You know, and then you look at the ordinances, do you have an ordinance somewhere that says all water services have to be copper? You know, if you have one from 1983,
Right now, our ordinances are in the toilet, I can tell you that for sure.
But me and Matt were just, they're very vague, it basically, it gives me and Matt a lot of power, but the council has to approve it, but we're having a hard time finding where things were
Yep.
officially approved. I mean, it was
Yep.
common practice, we only allow K copper, but
Yep.
to physically see where that was
Right.
approved and in writing.
Well, and that's,
You
and
know,
that's
I mean-
where the statements from, former DPW directors and so forth. I did get a copy of the DEQ form that needs to be turned in, and it's a little different than we thought, and it's kind of a questionnaire. And on the
Yeah.
questionnaire, it says, to the effect of, how confident are you in your findings?
Okay.
1 to 5.
So
Now,
you
if
should-
a person has a basement,
Mhm.
can you tell better what's coming in?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
should be able to.
Then you
it
should be
coming
able to
through.
see it.
And what we've set up is, in the GIS system, Don will be able to take his iPad out when he replaces a meter. He'll be able to look at that, take a picture of the meter and then input, it's meter number 364J and it's a 1-inch copper coming in.
Okay, and then you know for sure. that
And then you
that's
know
what
for
that
sure.
Well, and then at least you have a searchable database.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We
And
had
so,
something for electricity once, I don't remember that plan, I remember seeing him on the planning commission, but then all of a sudden it was that we had to adopt the universal code, universal building codes.
Mhm.
So we adopted whatever the universal code is, I remember that we adopted that, the other stuff had to get thrown away for some reason.
But as we do this too, I think we should work with Spicer too to get a formal set of specs that this is actually what it is in writing. So, cause we had a guy question us, well, he's looking at replacing his service line, he's questioning all these different materials, and said, well, where's the ordinance that says that you've gotta make me put K copper in? Well, we can tell you what materials we want in our system, is basically the answer I give him, but to show him in writing, there's nothing formally.
just say the Michigan Safe Drinking Water Act.
Right, but still, it'd be nice, okay, here's
Supersedes everything.
here's the,
Here's the specs for
here's
putting
the
it
specs that
along.
were passed by the council this
Well,
date,
yep.
feel free to have fun with it.
Well, basically, here's the specs if you ever want us to turn your water on.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and we're not gonna turn.
Well, that's true, put in whatever you want, but we might not give you water now.
What we can do is, when it comes time to do a water main project, we will have to update the village's water main specs. We will make those standards, and it should not be,
Deviated from it.
and it shouldn't be very hard to, incorporate those into the ordinance or, whatever, needs to happen from the governmental level, just to say, this is our standard, this is our
So if we
policy.
get questioned, here it is, you
Yep.
know,
Mhm.
it isn't Don or the council, here it is, this is what.
Yep.
A lot of stuff in this town did go just by, how would you say, precedent. For years and years and years, everybody knew this is the way that it worked, and some of that stuff was never written down, I think
Right,
that
that
was
happened in a
probably.
lot of communities.
Well,
yeah,
it
that's just-
was
you're
never
not
written
alone.
down.
No,
That's
No.
just the way it
we
was.
see this all the time.
Right, yeah.
And then you get a person who comes in and wants to do it differently, and
And
you
then-
say,
then you get
no, you will put in a driveway, you will make this a road. That happened out there on, Lake Shore Drive, I believe it's called
Yeah,
now.
it is, yeah.
He put in, what, 2-3 houses, and then he wanted to put in more, and we said, stop. You have to put in a line that's gonna feed this many houses,
Yeah,
'cause
you
that's
can't-
how
you
many
can't
can go
keep running
back there.
Service lines.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
big
you were
argument.
involved in that.
Big argument over what side line
Big
and
argument,
everything.
holy cow. But it's like, Don, we didn't have it in writing, the whole answer to his question was, because I said so. This is what we're doing. Cause that's what Hal said, that's what you needed,
You gotta have
and that's what
rules.
Spicer said. You know, you have to have rules.
Yep.
And you have to assume they're going to fill up whatever it is they make. So if they put a half-a-mile road, you have to assume they're gonna put houses on both sides all the way down.
Yeah, they're not doing
And
it for free.
if you just think, don't let them tell you they're just gonna put one house back there, because, it's not the way it works.
They're not investing that money just because they want to.
So here's a question for John and John, I guess.
Okay.
We're looking at these scenarios, at what point will we have enough project level detail to identify how much we're gonna need to bond? How far away are we from that? Because I assume at some point, we're gonna have to, start talking to, or at least investigate hiring a financial advisor and bond counsel.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty confident right now, you're gonna be bonding on the water side, at least around $2 million. you know, and that would, you know, whether that's replacing cast iron or all the 4-inch or, you know, a combination, it'll probably end up being a combination. You know, but you're gonna be bonding about $2 million for the water main. It won't be everything you need, but.
But it will certainly help us.
Absolutely, it'll go a long ways. And then on the sewer side, you know, we have some projects we need to do too. We've got some old pump stations, need some work out at the lagoons. You know, a lining program is, you know, needed. Sunview Drive needs to get done. You know, Sunview Drive needs water and sewer.
So so Sunview Drive, cause that's one project,
Yep.
it's not a bunch of different small projects wrapped into one. Is Sunview Drive, I mean, are we gonna be ready to work towards a bond at the end of this project? I mean, should we be thinking about that specific project in terms of engineering and all that stuff?
Well, I think that one project is easy just because it's kind of standalone and it needs sewer. However, you know, I think you're only getting a few complaints right now, so it's not necessarily catastrophic. You know, so is that your highest one on your list?
Maybe not.
You know, maybe not. In my opinion, the water mains, you know, near Hosmer, Fulton, that we had all these breaks, that's the area we really need to be concentrating on, you know, water and streets, really.
And I mean, I don't know how all this fits together, the council, but 4 years is, I think, too long to wait to start something. Like John said, if we could do a small project, like transferring some cash, but have it in the bigger picture. I mean, 2 years would be a wish list, which it sounds a long ways away, but it's, by the time you start getting through all this stuff, 2 years is not a lot of time to get.
Well, how much are
things in
you
order.
gonna have to spend to fix that road over there in front of Union Court?
I'll let you know this fall.
Okay,
Well,
I
let
mean,
me
why
know
couldn't
this
that be
fall.
like one of the first, I mean,
That's not.
Well, I think
why
that's
fix it and then refix it? I mean,
kind of the next step is to, you know, let's take a look at all of these, see where the water, sewer, streets kind of overlap.
yeah,
And then, you know, come up with a plan and then decide, you know, is it, you know, a $350,000 project this year and then another one in a couple years? Or is it a, you know, do we take the $2 million, spend it all at once? You know, those are, I think, the decisions that we need to think about over the next month or two here and, you know, really be prepared to answer, you know, come September.
And, I mean, from your guys' standpoint, unfortunately, the hardest step is to figure out what rate we're gonna do, cause that
Yep.
will fund all this stuff. That's, you're not sitting in an easy position, you know,
Nope.
I know, but we have a lot of information and to try to educate people too, and I think that water main break in that area really woke a lot of people up I mean, you hate to say it that way, but you know, when your water's flowing, people don't think about what's under the ground until you have a problem,
Yep.
and then.
And I do think we need to start talking about this at council meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we need to start a whole education thing going, I really do, I think that, you know, each council meeting, bring up something, so that people are aware, yes, this is going on. We haven't had public at these meetings, and what it is that's coming up, I do think we need to do that.
And it's, from what I've seen in the past, it's very important that if you guys can all have the same information, and when somebody asks you, they get the same answer from everybody, because if you get a different answer from Diane and a different answer for Jim, and then people's minds just get.
Well, the
Yeah.
gossip is
And
already
you
going
know how
around
people
town.
talk, unfortunately, you know,
Yeah.
they mean well, but it just gets, misinformation can really put it to you.
What did you decide, 2 million for the water, and what did you decide for the sewer?
Sewer, I don't remember right offhand, but it seems like it was around 2 million, John, something like that.
There's 2 bond issues.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
$1 million each.
I've been switched gears to water.
It's like 1 point, it's like
It's like a-
1.3-ish.
twice,
What did you say?
1.3 twice, maybe?
1.3?
See, if you look at this, Lois,
So
these gold things are the bond issues.
Mm-hmm.
what's on there for the sewer side right now in 2022 is 420,000 for Sunview and 500,000 for pump station number 1.
Yep.
And 250,000 for the effluent valves.
Cells
so
2 and 3.
2 and 3. And then in 2028, we have another pump station for 300,000. And then projects on cell 2 and 3,
The side slopes.
and perimeter drives, it's another 770,000. So, and then there's one other pump station, 150,000 out in 2028. So that's why we're looking at bonding those projects, at 1.3 million.
And in the meantime, picking away with doing some cured in place linings, you know,
Right.
doing a little bit every year.
Well, and I think we're sitting here with no debt except to ourselves. How many communities are sitting there with no debt?
Not a lot.
Yeah.
There are a few, but the important thing is to use debt strategically.
Right.
So
I
that's
mean,
why
I
I'm
understand
looking
if
and say,
you
oh,
need
look,
it,
we've
it's
got,
okay to
we've got
use it.
cash here, maybe we can use that to get us going and then repay it. And then let's make sure the debt is used in a way that makes sense, and obviously if you're layering, if you're doing water and sewer on the same street, the engineers will have to tell you how much of that project is water, how much of it is sewer, and you've gotta split the cost between them, and then how much of
Which
it
we
is
do
road.
routinely.
Right, yeah, that's just normal. But if you're gonna bond, you always wanna be thinking about how can we do this the right way, and then timing is what impacts the rates. So if we wanted to issue 4 million in bonds this year, your rates double.
And we'd all be shocked, you know, we really would.
And that's obviously not what we're
Yeah,
trying to
I know.
have happen here.
We did have a bad financial situation in this village, I think, and until she took over as village manager. And she was really good with the money, and I can attest to that, you know, I mean, she did an amazing job turning our finances around. So when she gets real picky, you know, that's the reason. And I trust
Fair enough.
her judgment on that. When she tells me something, I trust it because I've seen it work that way. But, yeah, we are pretty good right now, and I just hate, I don't want it to get real bad, you know what I mean? I want it to be
Yeah,
good.
Well, I have to tell you,
Matt's good, yeah.
I'm fine with Matt. I mean, I was always leery, any new manager that came in, the first thing I watched was what they do with their money. I don't have any problem with it.
So far than anything that I can see, he does a good job with money too,
The-
so we just need to watch him.
If he didn't, you'd know it.
Oh, yeah.
Because Chris would be
Yeah, you'd
screaming,
hear
yeah,
it.
but I'm always calling, I'm one of them, that, you know, I don't like numbers, I don't work well with them. I'm always calling somebody, you know, for Deanna, when she was here, I had came up and she went through a whole bunch of stuff with me. I called Marguerite here a couple weeks ago about some questions on the water, I'm always calling Chris or Matt, well, what about whatever? I just wanna know, if I'm gonna vote yes on something, I wanna know what I'm voting for.
Absolutely.
Oh,
I
and
think
I
there's
think
a-
that's wonderful.
there's a backdrop too to this, you know, regardless, almost not regardless of the financial situation, but in the grand scheme of things, nothing, the reality of our system is fact, and, you know, nothing gets cheaper over time. So, if we don't do anything now, say it's $4 million now to fix things, if we wait 10 years, it may be 10, 15, $20 million to get back to where we need to be.
Guaranteed.
So, I mean, it's a tough decision, but, you know,
Right.
having a $400
When the-
water rate
When
in
the
10
sewer
years.
light went in, it was $6.66 a foot.
Yeah.
Now, I remember, I mean, cause we did all the assessments, we did all of the, everything for them. And then when we went to put in another one, it had raised to like $30 a foot. But the $6.66, and people, and I don't know why we ever picked $6.66, what a strange
I
number.
know,
But,
the devil himself.
yeah, and they just came over that price, they thought it was horrendous.
And I'm estimating
But
for
now-
water main, $200 a foot.
Yeah, see, I mean, you can't do it fast enough, you can't get in there quick enough.
Yeah.
And I'm of that school too. Do it when it's the cheapest,
Yeah.
because it's never gonna be cheaper than it is today.
Right.
And if you don't do it,
I mean, it has to be done, I mean,
you're kicking the can down the road to your
Yeah.
children and, you know.
and I know it's under the ground, I know you don't see it, but if it's not there, they're gonna kill us. Because if they turn their spigot on and there's no water, they get really upset.
Well, right.
They just don't understand, they just don't understand what it costs to keep that water running.
In comparison, you know, we have pretty low rates compared to a lot of other
Really low
communities.
rates.
No, you have
And
a
people
really
don't
low bill.
realize that.
Yeah, we don't.
People
No,
don't
but-
realize
We
that.
have really low rates.
In the bill that, you know, a lot of times people complain that our monthly bill is too high. Well, it's because it's a quarterly bill.
Yeah,
Right.
And so,
it's like divided by 3.
we spend a lot, Marguerite and Jenny spend a lot of time explaining to people that, no, you were only here 3 months ago,
Yeah.
not last month.
Yeah, they don't remember
Yeah.
that they're not paying it every month.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a lot of patience to work in the office.
Well, that's what I said, you could break this, except it would be too expensive if we decided to do that, but you could break it into thirds and they could pay $100 a month and they'd probably be a lot happier.
Well, they wouldn't notice it, they just
No.
pay it more often,
Mhm.
but it would,
Ask them what they pay Spectrum for their TV.
Oh, yeah,
More than they do for water.
Yes.
a lot more.
Can you take a shower on your TV?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can you flush the TV?
yeah.
well, cable's not a public health problem, and water is.
Yeah.
If you don't have water, you
But I
have
mean, they're
sick
willing to
people.
pay that price.
Yeah.
They just don't wanna pay it for water and sewer.
Yeah,
So I guess moving forward,
Yes.
you know, we'll plan on having some discussions at the regular council meetings. You know, either myself or Neil will be here. I think next month I'm gonna be gone, so Neil will be here next month.
So we can really grill him.
You can absolutely
regular-
grill him as much as you want.
I won't
Are we
be here
talking
either,
about-
so he'll answer all the finance questions
We
too.
got the whole thing.
And he's got,
He's got instructions too, that if he doesn't know the answer, just say, I don't know, I'll ask John. So,
Yeah. I wish we had a scenario that started sooner.
I did one last week, or last month, that started sooner on the sewer side. I can look at, actually I tried some earlier on the water
It
side.
just doesn't work as
It
well.
doesn't fit, and that's why I said, well, we can get the water going if we borrow money from the sewer.
Okay. To
So
do some of this
To
stuff
do,
over
you
here.
know, 15% of that, to just get it going.
Is there a long-term impact on that self-funded stuff, or since the plan would be to pay ourselves back with bond money, the rates would need to be the same?
The rates would be the same, the only issue you would have is you would have to issue the bonds for water and sewer at the same time.
Okay, right.
So you can get the water fund paying back the sewer fund, otherwise the bonding agent's gonna look at this and say,
This doesn't work.
it doesn't work. So you gotta pay it back.
thank you guys.
Mhm.
Good job.
A lot of work
Do you
went
go
into
to the
this
bar
one.
after this and say, oh my gosh, those old women up there, everything.
Can't all go to the same bar.
You'll have enough water there.
Yeah, they'll have water. 10 years from now, they might not.
Yeah.
Thank you all, I know it's a
Thank
lot
you.
of information, but think about it.
You did a good job.
Does anybody wanna talk about it while they're still here so that we don't get off on some train track that we can never
And-
get back from?
We talked about it enough. 2 hours.
Matt, have I sent you the spreadsheet? Because I've updated it since I sent it.
You sent it to me, I think, last week or the last part of the week before,
Okay.
but
Are they gonna be at
it's,
the next
I've,
meeting?
I've thumbed through it, but if
Are you
you,
gonna be at the next meeting?
When
Someone's
is the
gonna
next
be at
meeting?
Spicer Neal is.
Neil will be here.
It would be the second Wednesday in June.
June 12th.
That way if we have some other questions.
The 12th of June.
Tell him that, if we have questions,
12th
he's
of
gonna
June.
answer them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As you start talking in front of the public, you might get some questions you're not thinking of. you know.
I
I
know.
could be here if needed that day, but the following 2 weeks I'm gone, so.
I think the goal is
That's why I
to-
thought we should kinda get on the same page here tonight before we have public actually walk in here.
Yeah, I think the plan is to not have a second meeting in the next couple months, but to try
Correct.
to do some informational stuff.
During the meetings.
During the
Yep.
meetings.
Mhm.
And John, I'd like to get with you and see if we can't start doing those overlays.
Yep.
To look at
That would be our next step.
the projects.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, even have some of this information if somebody's really grilling you,
Mhm.
to say, look, this is
Here's
actually
what we
what,
have.
here's what's going on, you know.
In fact, I
Just
wonder,
because you live in a different neighborhood, you know, you
Yeah.
don't see what's going on as a whole.
I wonder if some of the more illustrative maps,
Would be helpful.
we could blow some of those up and keep on hand.
Absolutely. we can get together, let's get together Wednesday, probably next week. And,
Show residents the red dot one and say, do you want this to have more dots?
well, what we could do is have some of the big ones mounted, and even, put them up on easels here, just so they're,
And we can just
Around.
let them sit around for
Right.
months. And
Oh, they can be in there, yeah.
anytime anybody comes in, they can just look at them and say, oh, wow, that's why my street.
Yeah,
is
can you,
like
if
a
you do some of these, can you have like a description
Mhm.
of what they're
absolutely.
just a brief little,
And maybe the age of the asset in the ground. you know.
Yep. So what, I mean, the power of that GIS system, I mean, we
It
can,
is fantastic.
we can do, I mean, all these maps came from the same set of data.
Well, it's
So-
much easier for people if they can look at it.
yeah.
It's a visual.
They're not gonna like it, but they can look
Yeah,
at it.
This isn't because Don or Chris or Matt wants a new water main
Yeah.
in front of their house, it's because as a whole.
It's because it's a 4-inch cast
The
iron that
whole
was installed in
system,
1942.
Well, just because your water works, doesn't mean everybody's does.
Right.
And just because your sewer never backs up, doesn't mean,
And just
And-
because it works now doesn't mean
And
it
you know,
will in
Exactly.
10
that's
years.
really hard to tell people,
it is.
for them to think about somebody else, you
And
know
that's,
what I mean?
that's the
What's
discussion we had for the roads, remember? Was
Right.
people saying, well, I never
Yeah.
drive on that road. Well,
And
That's-
You know, and,
that's not the point.
and by the same
Yeah.
token, us people with older water mains paid for your new ones.
Yeah,
Right.
Now
Right.
we're just,
Exactly.
you're gonna help us pay
And
for
those,
that.
those.
Well,
things
it's a
need to be brought
system.
up.
Right,
Yeah.
as
And
a
the
whole,
system
not,
has to
it's not just what's in front of your
It's the
house.
whole
it's-
village, we have to think about everybody,
Yep.
what everybody needs, you know? But that will be, Jim's right, that'll be a problem.
You'll get some questions that
Yeah.
they're gonna hammer you at times.
I like to think about it in terms of, what's the system gonna look like in 20, 30, 40 years? If we do nothing, the system is gonna be terrible. I mean, it'll be incredibly difficult to even keep up with everything that's breaking. So, I mean, if we think about it that way, we're gonna go through issues trying to get everything fixed now. But just imagine the issues that would take place
Yeah.
in the future. I mean,
We're in
I
a good
think-
place right
It would
now.
I
be
think
impossible
the big
to
thing,
fix
like,
this. We're in a
like the
good-
sewer mess
good
over
position.
on Sunview, to talk about what it, if you've ever been around where any sewer line ever broke, you know that is not a pleasant thing for anybody in the area, right? That we're looking at situations like that and explain that to people, and we're trying to fix that, because, so that doesn't happen. Now, we know we have problems, and we have to do it, but, that's also another thing that needs to get pointed out.
And it would be an interesting visual, John, to have a blow up on the map that shows
Yep.
the photos that we took from the camera inside
Well-
those pipes.
We'll get together next week, and I've got some ideas for some
Okay.
visuals we can do,
Okay.
so.
I find the pipes confusing, so I don't know if it's better to put dots on maps or show them pictures of
I
pipes.
tell you, I like that one with the red dots.
I do too.
Yep.
And if you, that's what I was thinking, if you had a description on that and then a picture with a couple of what you're talking about,
Yep,
that would help.
that's kind of what I was thinking,
Yeah.
especially.
Put it all together.
Like Sunview,
Yeah.
having it highlighted and then a blow up with a picture of that pipe that was all
Yeah.
crushed.
Yep.
And an explanation that wasn't
Yep.
put in with the system,
Right.
and it was put in wrong.
Yep.
So,
And by investing the money in the camera, I mean, probably before all this started, we assumed that was probably one of the best lines.
Because
Yeah,
it's
one of
it's
the
one of
new
the newer
lines.
ones,
Right,
right?
so,
Yep.
Yeah.
by investing the time in looking at all the pipes, you found it, and, you know, you probably prevented something in the future from
Yep.
being more catastrophic. but-
Well, we found issues that needed to be
it
fixed.
is one.
We did.
Yeah, I think 4 of them.
Yep.
Needed to be fixed right now. And we
Right,
did
and
that.
you use that new stuff, that works really good.
And we would have never known without those cameras. It would have been a sinkhole that we would have had to.
Right, you would have had a sinkhole along M52.
And
Maybe,
that-
maybe
and a-
not right now, but
Right.
sometime in the near future, there
And
would have been a
a poss-
sinkhole on
Well, like
M52.
after the rain Sunday?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'll
Possibly
tell
a
you-
whole neighborhood backed up with sewer and a
Right.
sinkhole in
Yeah.
M52 that you gotta do something now.
Yeah, and I know we're skipping the storm sewer system, but was driving through town during that torrential downpour on Sunday, and Bell Avenue was a lake, an absolute lake. There was nowhere for that water to
Well,
go.
we got 1 inch in about 15 minutes.
Yep.
That's what we got at my house.
We followed that all the way to Detroit. To the airport.
Thank you.
We about covered it? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate all of your information and
We'll deliver more good news. I
Well,
do
the
think,
more times you come, the more used to it we get, so
well, and
that
I
helps
think
too.
starting to layer it and figure out how much of it is streets, how much is water, how much is sewer, starts to give you a better picture of what's driving this.
I suspect there's no more public comment.
Yeah, I just got one off, Tom, but it's for John and Matt. I get the DNR newsletters, and it looked like they are releasing a lot more and approving a lot more grants this year. Putting more money out there than they have in the past. Are we going after any of that? Is that anything that would help us here?
I don't know about this.
Wannabe
I
projects?
don't know about this stuff. We
Not for
have-
this, but.
We have a pending grant for the DNR for our play structure
Yeah.
in the park. And last week we met with the grant manager from the DNR and she looked at our park and kind of checked out the area. And I think September is sort of the initial review of those and we'll get a better idea of what they're looking for. You actually have about a month to answer the questions they might have, because they'll score us in August. And
Will
then
that open us up to even more possibly, or no? Is it very specific to what you're going for?
probably if we're awarded. it
Are they
would
gonna
be
score
helpful.
you and let you fix it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, they're gonna score us in August and give us about September to answer questions.
They
or
go
get
through
more
and tell you
information.
what you need to have in there to
Well,
get the grant.
I was thinking, we were talking before, and it's just the wannabe projects, the connecting the rail trail or improving the bank right there where the trees are. And that was actually, a couple of those, they spelled out pretty specific that that's what they want.
We are always looking for that, and we actually, Rob Eggers, the president of our company, is very, very good at looking at, those DNR and recreation
Yeah.
type grants.
And am I right, they did release more this year and made it more accessible?
I don't know if they have, if they released more, but it seems like there's more out there.
Okay, because the
Or
way I read it
maybe
was,
it's more accessible.
they
I'm
want
not sure.
more of these little
Yes.
projects.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and we did the play structure one, just Jenny and I did that. If we were to do, the bridge connector and path
Yeah.
loop and all that, that's definitely something that I would suggest we have Spicer work on.
Right.
Something like that, we would need backup.
And I know that's gonna cost, no matter what, it's still gonna cost, but I was just wondering if it's something that we could put a grant, put in for something like that, and then if it's over what we wanna do, fine, but.
It doesn't hurt to apply.
Right.
It doesn't, and it doesn't hurt to get to know the person that's gonna score it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they will actually take a red pen
Yeah,
and fix it for you and send it back to you, and you rewrite it and send it back to them and you get it.
Yep.
So, it's good to know those people.
Yes.
And it was the same thing with that housing program.
Oh, I bet.
They're the ones that said to me, get out of where you are, bring more people in. And those were $250,000 grants
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah. Well, I think those folks are looking for a reason to say yes.
Mhm.
I don't think they're looking for
Well, we were
reasons to say
fixing
no.
people's houses for free.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a great, and then they took it all away from the little people and gave it to the county. The state did that.
well, I think there's a chance that there's, any of that money try again.
Yep.
It would be beautiful with that, what we have down there right now,
Mhm.
the way that's fixed up. Make that bank look nice,
I do have to say,
that would be
the
beautiful.
kids went, for some reason, to this gazebo to get the pictures taken for prom Saturday.
It looks nice there, though.
But it doesn't. When you
Oh,
get
I
in
think-
there, the
oh.
steps are bad,
The pictures look great.
the pictures look
Yeah,
great.
the pictures look great.
But it was
Steps
hard
like
to
on
get
the
down in
dike.
there, and it was hard to get around, and.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
I thought, why
And their
aren't you guys
heels
in
and
the
dresses.
park? Yeah,
Yeah,
why didn't you go over to the park?
looking at the
Um,
pictures, they look
The
fantastic.
pictures look fantastic, but that place, over to the waterfall, they should have gone over to the other park, the little
Yeah,
park.
yeah.
Would've looked good, but,
Yeah, or we're gonna put a basically a road in there, starting
Okay.
pretty quick here. And then we're gonna put in a pergola and all that stuff that we talked about during the budget, so.
well, somebody said to me, why don't you guys put a fountain in there? I said, there is a fountain in there. It's there, it's just not running, there's no
Yeah,
ducks.
it might not be on.
There was a pump failure there.
Yeah,
That good clean river water is
Did you
really
say-
easy in the pumps.
Yeah.
John, Did you say, Eggers is the president of your company now?
Rob Eggers is the president of Spicer Group.
Wow,
He replaced Don Scherzer
I swear to God, I worked with him when he was first there,
18 years ago.
yeah.
See how old she is?
I was old then.
See how long she's been working?
But yeah, Rob is president of our company, and we've got, you know, a whole bunch of municipal planners now, and they've got a very, very good track record of getting recreation grants.
Okay,
And a lot of that is because, you know, they have the ability to look at the projects and know whether or not it's gonna score high enough to fund, and so
Yeah.
they won't
Yeah.
waste the time going after
Boat
projects that aren't
launch
fundable.
and all that, I mean,
and they
that's-
always tell you that, don't go
Yeah.
after what you want, go
Yeah.
after what they wanna give you.
I think
It's
this
the
last
key.
round, I think they ended up, I think they applied for 14 grants and they got 12 of them,
Okay,
so.
I think we should look into it, definitely. I mean, and it was just a news, I mean, it was just their
Yeah.
own newsletter, but I
either
did
that or
some,
just have Jenny write it.
yeah, I went onto their podcast thing and
There's
listened to a little bit on
She's
that.
looking for more stuff to do.
Sounds pretty
Once
positive.
email out.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it time to make a motion to adjourn?
We haven't, okay,
What do we have?
I don't
to
think
do?
we have a consensus, I don't think we know what we,
No, I don't think we do, because I don't think we know what we want to do.
As for what we
yet.
wanna talk about next month?
no, where are we
This,
planning on
me?
going? Oh, are we gonna do this? Some form of this?
Some form of.
Do we all agree yes?
Yes, oh,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes.
See, you're
Whatever
not sure.
needed
Yeah, I
most.
said, well, I think that we need to look at it, but it needs to be, you know, we don't, not one solid steady plan, you know, that we need to do some projects on there, you know, and figure out what that's gonna be, where we're gonna start, exactly what
Well,
are we gonna do.
I think Don knows where there's every problem, and like he said,
Well-
to start where,
We know where every problem
Well,
is, it's
yeah.
on these papers.
but he knows more than,
I guess, in my mind, you would pass some form of rate restructuring, and with whatever money we have, then we start prioritizing
Yeah.
and work within our means, and
Okay, so
Yeah.
take the last 3 pages and decide which rate one you wanna go with.
I'd have to
Number
agree
two
with you,
is
Don,
the-
I mean, the very fundamental first
I
thing
mean, if
we
we're
really
just
wanna
gonna
do
go
is
just right now, we can
figure
change
out
No,
it.
we're not making a
what level
decision,
of funding we can
you think number
do,
2,
and then we'll work
How many
within our
miles?
means, I mean, that's just.
because
Scenario,
don't-
scenario number 2. you said.
Scenario
are
number
you
two,
are you just going for the cheapest
No,
water bill? Because between scenario 1 and scenario 2, well, I guess there's a big difference, between
Yeah.
3 and 1, there's hardly any difference at
Yeah.
all. Scenario 1, you're using cash.
In terms of bang for your buck, John, which scenario most likely
Okay.
fits our needs?
Scenario 2.
I was looking at scenario 3, because the price difference between, say, you know, 1 and 3, and really 2 and 3,
and that's assuming that we're gonna go for $4 or $5 million?
that was the big one, yep. But if you look at the effect on your rates, it really
It's
was.
really just those last 3 or 4 years
Right.
that you go from 7 or 6 to 10% increase instead, you know.
But
That's
am
the
I
big
right in
difference.
saying we don't have to do anything except have this wastewater thing by November?
Well,
Is that
Correct.
right?
we wanna start doing something now.
Right, I know that,
As
but
quick
what
as
I'm saying is in
Yep,
terms of,
in November, we have to, Matt has to sign a piece of paper that says your asset management plan is complete for wastewater and stormwater.
for wastewater and stormwater, right, okay.
Isn't the water rate study part of the asset management plan that has to be turned into the state of Michigan too, or?
January 1st, 2020, there is a 2-page form that we have to fill out for the water system inventory, and then a methodology has to be put with it too.
Right, I mean, there has to be some kind of rate structure to fund your asset management plan, right? So
That does not, that's not part of, the January 1st submittal. The January 1st submittal is just your material
It's like,
system
when are we
inventory.
gonna do a
Yeah, I
budget
did
meeting,
see that same
right?
thing. Yeah,
Because
really
we're
couldn't
gonna
get
do
our-
anything
Your
else,
asset
so-
management
But here's-
plan is
here's
something
what
that
we're
we
not
need to be
gonna
looking at
No.
every
We need to
year, and it's a
decide.
It actually
continuous
goes right
There was a
review.
capital improvement plan they made to submit that, wasn't there some part of a rate study involved with some of that that was required?
I'm sorry.
That's part of your asset management plan, and that's what we're doing.
No, but I mean, I thought it had to be.
I know, but that's just using
No.
all cash and water, so
Nope.
we're really not gonna do very much
Nope,
in water.
just a methodology.
Okay.
Scenario 1, we're not doing very much in water, right?
I don't like scenario 1.
we're just using
Scenario
cash.
one, you will, if you follow scenario one, you would eventually exceed both scenario 2 and 3, if you just kept adding 5,000 a year, but it's gonna take you a lot longer to get there.
I mean, there's no projects on this page for water.
Not specific, no, it's just raising the money and then funding projects
As
as
we
you
go.
go. Right,
That would be a cash base.
cash
But
based.
I mean,
I
that's
gotta
not a
tell
bad
you, if we
plan.
don't do
That's
something,
okay.
people's
I
gonna
know.
have a
I know.
hairy.
Well, people are gonna have a hairy anyway, because.
Yeah,
it's
but I
gonna be,
mean,
you know.
if you do a little bit, like you said, you know, take the money that we got and do a little bit.
But that's scenario one that he was talking about, and I think that does make sense.
No, it's,
Yes, cause he talked about.
no, it's not, because there's no bond issue in water in scenario one at all.
No, but that's not what he was talking about here, he was talking
So,
about taking.
I think
some-
what he
No,
was talking
no,
about
he's
was
just-
separate.
Loaning yourself some
No.
money that
Yeah.
jumpstart.
But
He's
you have to
telling
pay
us-
back that money from the bond
We have
issue.
no place, we
Yes.
have no way to pay it back with this one. With this one, you're gonna bond two at the same time, and you're gonna pay back sewer with water. Because it's gonna bond to get some money. Here, you're not getting together enough money to pay back.
You wouldn't have $100,000 until 2023, so you wouldn't even be able to do much at all. Can't do much with $100,000.
No.
right? So,
No,
It's
this one
based
doesn't work that way.
A block.
These two will both work that way.
Three
You're
isn't that
talking
much more than
one.
two, really.
One
I
is
One
not,
does not
I
do
think
the
three
thing that we
provides
could do something right now with. Let's
okay,
see.
I see.
I think
Highest
bang for
level.
the
So
circle
prior
is,
to these-
3 is the one I
Yes.
saw that.
Probably this
I
one,
think,
because
I
you're
think
getting
that
most
one's the
money in
highest
water.
level
Well,
of
here's the
service we
thing.
can provide.
in terms of these two scenarios,
Yep,
And it sounds like we
you
need
could
it
go with
fast.
this one. This and this are the same, except in this one we've added another bond issue 5
and
years
make this
later.
one less.
A little bit less. It's $2 million, this is just under $2 million. So this
Oh, you
is
got
one-
different numbers.
Yeah.
Ah,
the
okay,
X's are different.
gotcha.
So, you're bonding about 2 million here, and you're bonding 2 million here. So all we're doing is saying, okay, let's put another bond out here. And that's something you can decide as you go through,
Right,
as
you
you
don't-
figure out your funding, as you get more details.
So we
Then
could
you-
do two, and then
I
in a
think
couple of
someone
years,
needed to
say
do
we're
You
gonna
can
have to do
say,
this
we
again.
need to do more on the water
Yeah,
side,
Yeah,
so
that's what we
let's.
said before, is
Okay,
that,
so
yeah.
you're saying we could still, whoever's here,
Well,
could
yeah.
still bond again later if they want
Yes.
to.
Right,
If we went with this scenario
yeah,
now.
yep.
Well, and
That's
quite,
what we
and
said in
quite
the last one, I
truthfully,
thought.
Okay.
in another 10 years beyond this, you're probably gonna be bonding for something else.
I think we're gonna
Yeah.
constantly
I
be
mean-
bonding every 5 to 10 years.
Some of us
Yeah.
could be dead, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Well, don't say
Yeah.
dead, just
I
say
don't
not
see
on
it-
the
I don't
board.
see a way around it.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well, that would be
I don't.
about the same, to
That
not
would
be
be.
on the
You
board.
paid off
Yeah,
the water
yeah.
bond last
Oh,
year.
no,
This
no,
is
no,
what
I'm
we're gonna-
leaving
we're gonna-
before I
But this
go.
is living, just, I think that's the way it's gonna have to be.
She's gonna
from
get a
now on.
break.
Yeah. Okay, I gotcha, I gotcha.
You know, it's like a car payment, I think we're just gonna constantly live with a
The
bond.
drumbeat seems to be about 10% a year.
Yeah,
That's just where we're at right now, and for a lot of communities, it's been 8%, 7.5%, I've got a few at 10%. I had one doing 15% per quarter for 2 years, 3 years.
I know I've asked this
So-
1,000 times, but does this assume what the city of Saginaw does to us too?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, I've gotta go back, now that I know it's 8%, I assume 6% from the city of Saginaw, so I
Okay,
gotta
but
go
there
back.
is an assumption in here,
Yes.
every year of something from the
Yeah,
city of
Yeah,
Saginaw.
I need to go in and adjust
So we
that.
know it's
And
eight
since the
percent
city
for
is-
the next 3 years.
So it's gonna be a little bit more expensive,
Okay.
so these numbers will change a little bit.
and that's out of our hands anyways.
That
It
portion
is.
Yeah.
Well, not really, well, no, I'm not gonna say it, never mind. Cause you'll jump over.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is that we're gearing towards,
Oh,
kind of
come on,
towards
like you're
scenario
afraid of
2.
that.
I like to,
And, you know, using that, we've got some direction, and we can get together and formulate, you know, some projects and see how, you know, the water, sewer, streets all kind of relate to each other.
and plug in the assumed 8%.
Right,
Just-
put that in there.
Man,
Yes.
let me ask you this question. We get 8% from the city of Saginaw, so we add 8% to our stuff. Now, you and I both know that's not what we need to pay that 8%. So would you suggest we stop doing that and actually charge ourselves what the real cost is? Like 6% instead of 8 to get their 8%? Are you following me?
Well, in terms of,
See, if we do 8% on what we charge, it's more than what we need to pay the 8% they're charging us.
Right, so if you raised your rates 8%, that would be more, yeah.
That's how we get more money. That's how we've always been getting more
Right,
money.
so
So what
in
if
the
we
model,
stopped
in the
doing
model,
Oh,
that
I see.
cost from the city of Saginaw is 6%. Everything else is, wages are, I think, 1.5 or 2%, and general inflation is 2%, and utilities might be 4 or 5%. So every line item in your budget is forecasted at a different rate based on what we think. And now I can go in and I can change that one for the wholesale cost of water from 6% to 8%.
Okay.
So it's gonna move that one line item up a little bit.
But I'm saying to him,
so,
that's more than we need,
so
so.
are you suggesting that we reduce our, so basically we only raise what we need to pay the city?
Their bill,
And then stick to this model?
and then
Well-
stick to this model, raising it 10%.
The only problem with that is that we have to pay employees and stuff out of that, so if we're just paying for water, we cannot function. The
And so
water-
the model factors all of that in. So
Okay.
we're calculating the cost of water, the revenue requirements, not only to pay the city of Saginaw, but to pay staff, to pay your insurance, to pay everything, your utilities, pay your engineers, and then on top of that is the capital. So we factored it all in there, and the 10% is what we get when we mash all those numbers together. So yes.
Yeah, I know. It was just a thought I had, because, I mean, I know how I wrote the budget. I mean, I know what I did. And I'm just,
Can I ask you a question? So in the past, if you got an 8% raise from the city for the wholesale water, you just raised the residents' rate as 8% too? Okay.
That's common practice.
But, so I mean, in effect, she's saying, he's right, you're raising more money than you need, huh?
it's a way to get more money and nobody ever knows.
You just blame the city.
And
But
this
Yeah.
might not be right, but you can kind of blame the city too as a resident. Our costs are going up 8%,
We need a little more for capital.
I know,
you
I know.
it's
I
not
was
the
just
right
trying
thing
to
to
get
do
this not to
necessarily,
be as
but-
high as it is, but
we
I
haven't,
just asked him and his answer was no, and I accept it.
yeah, and honestly, we haven't raised rates in the budget for like the last 2 or 3 years, because we did a relatively
Well, we
large
usually only raise them
before.
when the city raises ours.
Yeah, but in this scenario, in order to accomplish cash flow requirements for bonding, we need to increase that extra amount so that we have enough cash to basically appease the bonding companies and the financial people who are gonna be looking
Okay.
at this. So if we cut that back, we may not meet our cash flow requirements.
Okay, but if we really wait till 2023 to bond, we're gonna be putting that $35,000 away every year. That just got freed up from that bond payment that
And
we
that's
had.
figured in.
Well, for
Right.
the most part,
And you did
except
that,
for,
right, in your thing.
except for our costs will increase every year. So that $35,000 may be reduced by whatever our percentage of increase for operating costs.
Not if we're going up 10% every year.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if we don't,
As far as I
Increase.
see, that 35 will just lay there. I don't know what you've got planned for it.
no, it will lay there unless we don't increase rates, because our operating costs increase. So if you don't increase rates at a rate
Oh,
that
but we're gonna
exceeds-
increase rates.
Right, but if we
right?
don't increase rates at a rate that
I'm not
exceeds
happy
the
to do it,
city's.
but we're
So-
not
No, I'm not
happy
Christine,
to do
since
it at all.
you're a numbers person, what you see in scenario 2, you see where your cash is here?
Yep.
Every year that keeps going up,
Mhm.
even though we're not paying bond until here.
Okay,
So you issue the bond in 2023, you'll probably have a $10,000 or so interest payment for that year, but the real payment starts the next
Yep.
fiscal year. So we're building up cash, that's why we're doing the 10%, so that when we get out here, we can just have a 10% increase and not have to jump up 40%.
okay.
So
And that 35,000 is included in all of these as it goes across?
yeah, whatever number the surplus is, right,
Yeah.
I'd have to see
Okay.
what it is, but yes, so we're building up cash here, and on the sewer side, we're using cash to keep the rates moderate.
Oh, you are. Oh, I see that, okay.
So we're eating up cash here, and we're building up cash here. And this is how we play the game.
Okay, we can't make a decision on this until we look at this stuff and really ponder it, because right here, that's case in point.
And then this chart, which I haven't talked about at all, talks about your debt service, and then your coverage ratio.
Yeah, we go from none to some.
Right, yes. And then then you go to a lot more on the sewer side.
But I think
Okay.
for the meeting in June, we just need to say that there are, you know, our study has shown that we have these issues that have to be taken care of. And that's what we've been having the special meetings for, is to discuss what it is that we're going to do and how we're going to do that. But it just to start making people aware that it's going on.
Yeah, but he needs some kind of an answer to
For
put the
what?
rest of it together.
Yeah, I like to plug in that 8%
I
that,
don't like any
whatever
of
it
it,
is
but
that
then you, so go with the rest
we
of them.
assume, plug that in, and, that gives us the opportunity, like we had
Yeah.
discussed before, we can always rebond.
We can rebond, I just
Yeah.
like, I would like to know what we're getting out of
What do you
two,
think, Diane?
for sure.
Yeah,
I
well, I
like
think that
two
comes
or
when we
three,
decide.
either one.
Yeah, three's good too, I
Yeah,
Three isn't that much more money, I didn't think, but I don't know how
So
people
what are we gonna
will.
let them know, 2?
Well, I
Well,
guess we need to know if we wanna replace 4-inch mains or if we really wanna replace plastics mains.
Well, we
So
don't even
that's
need
the
that
challenge.
answer right now. I think,
No.
I think the
No,
magic,
we
the
don't need to know
magic
that.
number right now is, you know, what you're looking at is about a 10% increase across the board and a
And
restructuring
then we can
of how
decide
you
what we
charge
wanna
your
do with
rates.
it.
Right.
Well, once we find out what we are comfortable financing at a particular level, our ceiling, then we identify the projects.
Yep.
Then we fit
Then you
that
make it
in.
fit.
Okay,
Yep.
make it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
so-
live within our means, whatever you give us.
but we
Okay.
are kinda
That's
looking
right.
at 4 to 5
We'll have to
million.
pick the best
Yeah.
projects.
That's,
But
And I
Oh,
don't
we're
look
looking
at
at,
it, I
right.
don't look at it as us giving it, this is the community.
Right.
giving it. I
Absolutely.
mean, it's everybody that pays the bill.
You're giving us the
I
funding
know.
vehicle
And,
to.
and
but
that.
you're making the decision and you're gonna be voted
Yeah.
out, so get
Right.
prepared.
That wouldn't break my
But if-
heart, I
Wouldn't
don't
break
like
mine
this.
either.
I don't like
I
this.
just as soon do it and leave.
But,
Yeah.
but,
So my understanding of this, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, is we'll identify our ceiling, and then we will pursue funding for that, and then we will engineer the projects based on what our funding ceiling is, and then we'll do the projects in an increment.
Well-
I don't think you can do $4 million worth of projects in one single year.
oh heavens.
We can give it a heck of a try.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
It'll
is-
be over time. We
If you
won't
start-
spend our bond proceeds in 1 year.
Not
Right,
usually,
right.
because it's just too disruptive for the
Right.
village. You can't close down 10 streets simultaneously.
Yeah.
Because to me, that was my point about what is going to happen when and what is most important. I mean, this thing on Sunview, to me, has an urgency about it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
We really do with a sewer backup.
And so
I
the-
grew up next to the Ohio River, and what would happen in the floods is the sewers would back up, right? I'm gonna tell you, thank God we were far away from that neighborhood. You did not wanna be down there.
Right.
I mean, it was.
Well, and that's the odd part, because Sunview is one of the highest spots
Right.
here. So there's something really wrong with that sewer for it to back up, I mean.
But I mean, you're looking at it, that, to me, that it should be issue oriented,
Mhm.
the projects that we do, what is most important, what really needs to be done.
And that's what we will do is, you know, we'll
You're gonna
prioritize
highlight
the
it.
projects. And then, you know, in conjunction with what the council decides to do with rates, we will take those priorities and see how it best fits into the money that's available.
Yeah, and what you'll
And
see
that's really
is-
why we're doing all this study, is to, you know, figure out what is the priority.
And the way you'll see it project-based will be through our capital improvement plan. So every year, we will add a new set of 6 years worth of projects, and we'll work with Spicer to identify those.
Mhm.
So it's not gonna be, you know, there's not gonna be an entry that says $4 million water project, and then just guess what it
Right.
is.
No.
We'll break it down, you know,
To what's
water
going to happen
project.
and when and what's most important.
Yeah, so
And
it'll be,
that's why I
yeah.
do think that our DPW is just essential in this and telling us what he's seeing.
well, and a lot of
It's
that's in
important to
here.
happen.
A lot of
It's
that's in
here.
here. So when we receive those maps, we'll basically have a hotspot
Right.
of the areas we need.
Yeah, I mean, you've done a lot of the groundwork where you have a lot of good information available for,
That was never here before.
right. I mean, before we could guess, you know, I mean, we could make an
And-
educated guess.
Well, you got a $500,000 grant to help you figure this out.
Yes, we did. And what you've got to remember is you keep saying, I did such a wonderful job. I was manager of this town when money was just exploding out of everywhere. I mean, we got grants, everything was a lot more than what it is now, so we were able to build a DPW complex with cash. You know, it's just a matter of shifting a few things around and we built it with cash. That's why we have no debt. But they've cut everything, the revenue sharing was great back then, fun, it was fun to be manager.
I do realize that, it's just that what I'm talking about is to be in the interest of the town, what was in the best interest of the town.
Well, when I took
so.
over, we had about $300,000 in the bank, and when I left him with $3 million.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking
And
about.
it's shrinking.
But you've done some good projects with that money.
Yeah, but she did do a good job, but I know she had a lot of grants.
I did a lot of projects in between though, too.
No,
All
that's,
the
I mean, but
streets,
you've done a lot
the
of.
DPW, yeah,
Yeah, she's done a lot of streets and the water underneath them are,
but I had the money to do it with.
yes, yes.
That's the difference.
But yeah, but you use the
Now we
money
gotta
right.
get the money, so if this is the way we have to do the money, this is the way we have to do the money.
Absolutely,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
the way you'll see it in the capital improvement plan, it will be, like every year, John will give us, you know, water main project on Fulton Street from Charles or from Clinton to Hosmer, and that'll be one project, and that'll take
Yeah.
the summer.
We will actually put together a year by year
Capital improvement.
capital improvement plans of what we think. So we've already done that with sewer, you know, to an extent. We've got a pretty good idea of what year we want the projects to go. We'll do the same thing with water. You know, and we'll figure out, you know, we're gonna do Hosmer and Fulton Street this year. You know, the next year, we're gonna do Sunview. You know, so that's the next step.
The bond, how long can you not spend the money?
Well, you have to wait until the financial people sell the bonds, I mean.
Oh, I know, but how long can you
Hold it.
hold it?
Well, so if you're going for an SRF loan, you're approved for a certain amount and then you can draw on it, and you
Okay.
don't start paying interest until
think I
you
remember
draw
that.
on it. So you might be approved for $2 million, but in the first year you only take out 500, the next year you take out 800, so they start
And meanwhile,
charging
you're
there.
paying this attorney,
No, you've already paid all of them,
You
that's
pay-
all
you
done at
pay
the front end.
once.
you just
Um,
pay,
Yeah,
we
and
used
then-
to.
Taking draws on the
but for
loan.
the traditional general obligation bond,
Okay.
you would receive the money and you would put it into a special fund and then
And then
pay it out
as-
as projects
Okay,
come
and
up.
at the end, you,
But you're paying interest
show
on
them.
that from day one.
you are paying interest from day one.
Yeah, so, and probably principal and interest
Yes.
in the water fund.
Yes,
So you'll be having an expenditure in the water fund, principal and interest, and then you'll have a separate fund for the
we must have gone on
for
the
the
county
proceeds.
for that water bond,
I believe you did.
because the county handled it for us.
I
We
believe you
paid
did.
them,
I
yeah.
thought it was a Public Works.
I think it is,
Project.
it was with them that we got that water bond,
It's very common.
but we still had to use John Axe for some reason. That bonding attorney out of Detroit. Oh, it's all in there
So we
somewhere.
got somewhat of a consensus, right?
Yep, I'm
Well,
good.
well, I heard 2, and then I
Two.
almost heard, let's shift to 3 because it's not much more, so what?
I like to.
I'm
fine
what
with
I'm
them.
hearing is the general idea of putting wheels in motion. I don't think you're
Yeah.
ready to decide on projects 10 years from now.
Nope.
But in terms of timing and whatnot, get the wheels going.
Definitely.
This is a general strategy,
Yeah.
and whatever board is here 5 years from now is gonna look at where things are and look at the capital plan and say, maybe we'll raise rates a little bit more and do another project.
It is gonna be a living, breathing thing that's gonna have to be looked at every year. And I'd have to agree with John, what I'm hearing from you is that it looks like we're gonna be bonding for some water improvements in the next few years. And we're gonna be bonding for some sewer improvements in the next few years.
Yep.
What happens after that?
That's
It
something that's
might be
unlimited.
scenario 3, it might not. We'll look at it every year,
Could be
and
completely
see how it
different.
goes.
So as you approve a rate adjustment, they would do that every year? Or would you approve a 10-year plan? How does that
You
work?
could do it either way.
So how have you done in the past, Chris? You know, it just,
We've just, all we've done in the past is raise rates. There was
You
never a
raise-
plan
you raise-
and it
beyond,
was like that till
there
the
was never a
next.
plan beyond the budget you were approving,
Yeah,
and if
so
it
you
had an
just-
increase in rates, it
You
did.
did an adjustment, you didn't do another one until it was
Till we
Till they decided
were
to.
forced to,
decided.
till Saginaw did it, really.
So we could set it just to look at it in 5 years after we do the first, after we
Well,
initiate
you
the
could lock it
first.
in for 5
You're
years.
gonna look at it every year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so I would recommend looking at it every year.
So
as-
there's
as
a
part of your
couple
normal
of
budget cycle.
Couple of strategies. One, if you as the council feel committed to a 5-year plan and you wanna lock in whatever board is coming in after you you could adopt a 5-year rate plan. That can be overridden by any vote, by any council at any time. But at least it's in the public's mind, and it makes it easier for the next councils to say, yes, we'll approve that, or it's already approved and we're not gonna change it. It simplifies it. I'm not a big fan of it, only because things change all the time and we don't know.
And see, that's my problem with locking yourself into a plan. You don't know how things are gonna change from one year to the next. You know, you can look at it and say, well, this is maybe what we'd
Well,
like to
and
do,
you
but,
can't lock the next council into anything.
no, I know.
No, he can change it, they
They
can
can
change it,
change it,
and, yeah.
What we need to do is set a good foundation of reasons as to why we're doing this.
These asset
And why
management
it
plans that
needs
we
to
are
be done.
doing is your plan. You are going to have a sewer asset management plan. This is what you wanna do with your sewer.
And this is why you
You're gonna have
to
a
do it.
water asset management plan, a streets asset management plan. I mean, that's why we're doing this, to give you and the future councils, a plan. And those, need to be looked at every year as you do a water main project. The asset management plan's gonna change, because now this pipe isn't old, it's new, and so.
And it's a real learning scale for
Yep.
the new council. It's a terrible
Yep.
thing to jump into.
And the whole asset management model is a different way of doing things than has historically been done
Right.
in any governmental,
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I kinda like
So
it.
the other thing,
So
Matt,
it's smart.
I can send you the AWWA's recommended financial management policies. That's something that you can adopt as a policy and say, okay, we're gonna follow this policy of maintaining cash and setting rates and reviewing rates and looking at the CIP every year. And then again, that brings in the next, whoever replaces you has something there, and whoever replaces Matt, you're not reinventing the wheel over and over. It's like going back to the ordinance for service lines. If it's approved and documented, then
Yeah.
that's the way it is.
Yeah, and you won't lock yourself in for a long period of time, but as you do projects, you're saying, we're doing this project. And so you'll lock yourself in for that project, and you gotta fund it somehow.
Well, I think that's okay, you know that you have this project, I just, I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
don't
But
want
if you're
this
gonna,
whole big
but
thing.
if you're gonna pay for that project with a bond, and you're gonna get $4 million and only spend $800,000 on a project, you're gonna have to fit some projects in to do that
Use
bond
up the-
proceeds. I mean, I guess you could pay it back,
I'm
but
not
it's
a
just a
fan
waste
of
of
that.
money.
I
it's
just
a
don't
waste
like
of finance,
Well, all right.
interest.
that. Yeah,
But if you're gonna bond, you need to bond.
right, but,
Because you can't just go bond.
no, but I
Right.
mean, you know what he's talking about, unless you
But
know
he's
exactly
saying-
where you're gonna spend that money.
He's saying we have a whole group of things that we're gonna do, but this one's gonna be first, and we're gonna borrow $4 million. We're only gonna spend 800,000 here, but then we have to do this project to get rid of the until the 4 million's gone.
Right.
And then you've got a bond payment for the rest of your life. That's how it works.
Cause otherwise you're,
Well-
cause say we get a $4 million
And I would
bond,
like when
do a
some-
project, and then the next council says we don't wanna do any
Yeah,
projects.
you screw it.
We're literally
To me,
throwing
you
money
see,
out the
that's
window
why-
and
Yeah.
not
that's way
getting
more money
anything in
than I'm
return.
used to dealing with.
Right, and that's just.
So, I mean, you
Yeah,
kinda
well,
will
I
lock
think
yourself
that
in
we will.
when you
We've got
bond
to
something.
Right.
get the money somehow.
I know.
And the
So you want
bond
us to
is
hang out
what
until the 4
Right.
million's
he
gone?
says.
Yeah, ideally, you guys will be here
I
until
don't
that's
know
gone,
it,
yeah.
I don't wanna borrow $4 million from nobody. You know, that's way out of my realm of,
Just think big. Think
Yeah,
big.
well,
yeah, you
it's
have
fun.
to,
Well, when your
because,
water
Don't think
and-
it's you. Don't think it's you. Just
When your
Yeah.
water doesn't work, you're gonna care.
yeah, exactly, we gotta get the money, so.
See, I'm worried about the Diana Coots asset management.
Yeah,
plan.
see, you have to
Yes.
just
Yeah.
take
Yeah,
that
yeah,
out.
That's the
yeah.
one I'm worried about.
Well, you have to think, how would the Diana Coots home operation work without water
Or sewer.
or
Yeah.
sewer?
Yeah,
If there
You
was a,
certainly can't put a septic system in that backyard.
No, because there's water
Yeah.
back there.
And it's against the village ordinance, I'm sure.
it is.
yeah, it might be.
Really, it's,
No, it is.
I mean,
but
it-
anyway, I'm gonna have a problem with it, and I just want all of this, I want huge transparency, everybody to know in town, I mean,
I agree.
Everybody has
Like
to know
Don
what it
said,
is we're doing.
we all
They have
have
to
to have
know
the same
why we're doing it.
answer.
They have to
Yeah.
know how much it's gonna cost them. And I have to know all this stuff before, all that too. But I do think it's now we're into big discussions, but I think we need to talk about it during the regular council meeting, as we go along through that.
Yeah, once we get out of the clouds and into the operational discussion of what the numbers are actually gonna look like, we can do customer impact analysis and say, well, the average person is gonna pay this much
Right, and that, they
in
need
this,
to know
this
that.
amount,
yeah.
and we can provide literature for that, and have at some point, we should probably have an open house or something to show people the need for that. Have the pictures laid out everywhere and show them exactly what's happening.
And it's not just us,
Just
it's
constantly talk about it.
happening everywhere.
It is, it's happening everywhere.
Okay,
So
now
what
I
do we
Ready to
need
go?
to do now?
Motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.
Oh, my goodness.
Thank you.
So,
Yes.
we have a meeting on Wednesday at 10. Let's plan a meeting.
Well, I understand it.
Come here Wednesday at 10 and.
Oh, you can get it.
Yeah, I can get it.
We're good.
There's a possibility, huh?
You don't, okay. I just was thinking, I was like, shit, we have something on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Because Thursday is segment.
Thanks,
The kids blame us.
You know what they say, old age is not.
We have our regular.
It's not, I'm
That's
telling
the
you.
truth, too. That's the truth, I got.
It's better than the alternative.
See everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. I don't
Thank
necessarily have to go
DPW
there.
for
That's an
doing such a
open.
great job over
That's
there in
not-
front of
You can just show up for that.
my future home.
Union Court,
Yeah.
keep it nice.
Well, hopefully we're gonna try to clean it up a little bit here
Yeah.
tomorrow.